On Point is brought to you by Crow Jamaica.
A very good evening and welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Patria K.
And I'm Dennis Sean.
And we've got a lot to talk about. Lots of things happening this week, Dennis, in Jamaica. Top of your list?
Well, top of my list right now is the attack in Saudi Arabia and the significant increase in oil prices, because I think that is going to have an impact, at least short term, globally. And our number one imported item is oil.
And certainly the oil conversation having other relevance here in Jamaica, the announcement by the Ministry of Energy that it will be subsuming the PCJ, questions being asked about the future of its subsidies.
I think it's a good move.
Yes? What does that mean for Petrojam?
Petrojam still continues.
As a standalone entity, does it now become subsumed in the Ministry of Science?
I would think as a standalone entity. I think one of the things that we missed is that the minister had said that PCJ, one of the things they did is they bought the fuel, mark it up, and then sell to Petrojam, which means it's marked up twice. So if you get rid of PCJ, you can't take out a little of that.
People then ask questions. If Petrojam is going to stand alone, Petrojam is the one that needs the governance more than any other entity. And if it is that Big Brother Ministry of Science and Technology is going to step in and kind of take a closer look, that kind of forensic look, and hold the hand of what happens at the parent company, why would you then leave the scandal riddled? Why would you then leave the cash-rich Petrojam out there on its own?
Well, I mean, you can have the oversight, I think that the oversight should have been there. I think that what happened initially was that there was just a lack of proper management of it, but the structure was there. What they have to do is just put a good board in place, put good management in place, and I think the place will run properly.
The story that we can't ignore as well, the lightning strike.
Yes.
That happened at the football match. One of those stories where Mother Nature, you can't control.
Yeah, but I don't understand. It happened. This is something that happened in the past already, with the Manning Cup matches, and I don't understand why the protocol was not there and someone was not there to ensure that these things are looked out for.
Well, what remains unclear, rainball is allowable in the matches. What usually obtains, though, is the moment that there is the first bolt of lightning that the match is supposed to end.
And you have a thing called weather forecast spreadsheet that you can use.
I don't know whether or not they can tell you about thunder and lightning, but the question is, was that the first bolt of lightning? Was the match stopped when it ought to have? And those are the kinds of investigations that ISA must carry out going forward. Well, folks, it's a tight show. We've got a lot to talk about this week. We're starting off by taking a look at the conversation surrounding the cockpit country. That conversation has heated up in the past couple of weeks. Environmentalists versus commercial entities, the opposition versus the government. What is the future of bauxite mining in the cockpit country?
And later on in the show, we'll look at Kingston booming real estate market. But before we do that, let's take a look back at some of the top business stories of the week.
At number 5, drone attacks on 2 of Saudi Arabia's key oil plants sent oil prices through the roof this week. Saudi Arabia said it held Iran directly responsible for the attack. This saw the immediate escalation of tensions in the Persian Gulf amid a standoff between the United States and Iran. At number 4, Haiti came to a standstill on Monday with no public means of transport available. Banks, government offices and schools were closed amid protests over a fuel crisis in the country's capital, Port-au-Prince. Protesters demanded that the government resolve the fuel crisis, which had lasted for over 3 weeks. The government owes fuel suppliers about $100 million in past payments, and so suppliers have refused to deliver petroleum products. At number 3, Jamaica has fallen 7 places in the latest edition of the Travel and Competitiveness Report. The country is now ranked at 76th out of 140 nations. The Travel and Competitiveness Index measures Jamaica's overall appeal as a tourism destination, along with the ease with which locals and foreigners travel in and out of the island. At number 2, amid concerns about slowing global growth and trade wars, the U.S. Central Bank has cut interest rates. The Federal Reserve lowered the target range for its key interest rate by 25 basis points to between 1.75% and 2%. However, officials were divided about the rate cut and over the need for future cuts. 7 members of the Federal Reserve Open Markets Committee, which sets the rates, voted in favor of Wednesday's cut. 2 members wanted to hold the rate steady, while 1 wanted to cut further. And at number 1 this week, the Jamaican government forked out some $1.2 billion to buy back a portion of the country's foreign debt. The buyback offer tendered by the government was worth $3 billion. In addition to the buyback offer, the government also floated a new bond which raked in $815 million. Both transactions formed part of a refinancing plan aimed at replacing expensive external bonds with cheaper debt.
When we come back, mining in the cockpit country, where exactly are the boundaries? We'll talk about it on the other side of the break.
Taking the pain out of the audit preparation. Crow Jamaica now offers audit management services, AMS. With AMS, Crow team manages your external audit process by providing the following. 1. Prepare and review schedules for your external auditors. 2. Prepare responses to your external audit team queries. 3. Assign our team members to locate supporting documents during field work. 4. Draft financial statements in accordance with IFRS to supply to your external auditors. 5. Provide guidance to your internal accounting staff regarding classification and recording of transactions. 6. Review your general ledger for accuracy. 7. Prepare necessary journal entries. 8. Prepare fixed asset register. 9. Prepare accounting and operational manual for effective internal control. 10. Liaise with the company external auditors. We work with your team to achieve timely and effective external audits, resulting in timely completion of your audited financial statement, while your current staff focuses on their daily activities. Contact us, info@crowhorwath.com.jm. Website, www.crow.com/jm.
Welcome back to On Point. Now, this matter of mining in the cockpit country has been a hot button topic, but those discussions have intensified over the past few weeks. Take a look.
The Holness Administration and the Noranda Bauxite Company are adamant that there is no mining taking place inside the protected boundaries of the cockpit country. But environmentalists and Jamaica's political opposition aren't buying it. The environmentalists are contending that mining should not be allowed in the adjoining sections of the cockpit country protected area. They say from an environmental perspective, bauxite mining is not sustainable, nor is it good for the environment. Meanwhile, Noranda Bauxite is insisting that there is no bauxite mining taking place in the protected areas of the cockpit country. The St. Anne-based bauxite company says there have been rumors that it is seeking to mine heritage areas such as Maroontown and Accompong, but those claims are totally unfounded. The company argues that in order to maintain needed bauxite reserves for its long-term sustainability, it has applied for permission to mine an area outside of the protected area described as Special Mining Lease 173. In the meantime, the opposition People's National Party journeyed to the cockpit country this week to have its own consultation with stakeholders there. The move saw opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips meeting with Noranda bauxite workers who expressed their fear that the opposition's advocacy may see the plant being closed and them being left unemployed. The cockpit country mining pushback culminated this week with a march on Parliament by activists who say their aim is to protect the area.
Joining us now are Sustainable Development Specialist Robert Carr and David Wong King, Director of Strategic Planning at Noranda Bauxite Company. Welcome to On Point, gentlemen.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let me perhaps start with you, Robert. Articulate the challenge that you have with where things are now with regards to mining in the cockpit country.
I think that there is a kind of bottom line that the residents and the people who live in the area and persons concerned with development understand. That bottom line is the services that the cockpit country provides for Middle Jamaica of, I would say it's the #1 shield against disaster impact because it controls this high altitude water. It's also the area where our genetic resources are unique and special. And we understand that between people and nature, those two things are the greatest multipliers of wealth. So there's a bottom line. We want to make sure those services of water management and water regulation, carbon sequestration, that's carbon, containing the carbon from our atmosphere, those are critical functions. In addition, people live there. People live and survive from the land. The last time we had a big separation of people from land, it wasn't good, and it brought us to this side of the world.
When was that?
Slavery.
Oh, that's a long time ago, man.
People will live in it now. So, to cut a long story short, the bottom line is that the cockpit country, as described by its own character, it's a cast limestone area. You don't bother it, it bothers itself, right? And so those services is what people are saying need to be maintained. There is a disagreement about the boundary.
Yes.
To be responsible, you have to decide if you have a core area, what do you need to make sure you manage those services?
But what changed? Because when the boundaries were in fact announced by the Prime Minister, there was a round of applause. People were happy, there was cheering.
Including
Fast
environmentalists.
Forward months later, and people are no longer happy, there is displeasure. What changed within those
The
months?
big change was that the boundary that the stakeholders and the scientists proposed incorporates the communities. The protected area incorporates the communities, and it incorporates that land characteristic and the services that it provides. Now, the boundary which was announced by the government is an area much smaller, and it excludes areas that people live in and are parts of the cockpit country, areas that carry out that service.
I want to introduce David in the conversation at this point because we're hearing about a boundary seemingly that was agreed upon through consultation, and according to Robert, a smaller geographical area that was, or larger, I'm not sure, geographical area of protected area, a smaller protected area that would have been announced by the Prime Minister. Is that how you recall it?
No. My understanding of the situation is that for decades, the country has grappled with where the protected area ought to be. And in that discussion, several boundaries had been proposed, as much as 11, I understand. Some by stakeholders, some by the University of the West Indies, others by environmentalists.
Did Noranda have a say?
No. Noranda would not have been a participant in where the boundaries ought to be. Jamaica Bauxite Institute would have represented the bauxite and alumina interest. And their boundary, I think, had been the smallest for the protected area. So the government consulted widely. They took into consideration all the boundaries. They held meetings. They consulted with scientists. And then they came up with a boundary that they thought would be a good balance between the environmental concerns and the economic.
Robert, I want to talk to you about that because I was a part of those consultations because I was at the PSOG at the time.
Okay.
And we did call for the government to define the boundaries. And I know that consultations took place widely. So my question to you then is, weren't the environmentalists involved in the consultation at the time? And then I don't understand now if you agree then, why disagree now?
Well, I'm of the same mind as you. It is my understanding that the environmentalists were in fact involved and did in fact agree on the boundary.
Okay, no, we have to
Let's set the record straight. Absolutely.
Let's set the record straight. The stakeholders recommended several years ago what the boundaries were, based on their discussion with the community people, based on their scientific investigation. That boundary includes areas, northern, northeastern, central, and it includes, it's clear they have presented a boundary, which they did so on the basis of the services and the fact that people live in those areas. You can't be mining where people live. It was a much larger boundary, right? They put a boundary that would allow for management of the services that the cockpit country provided. What was announced was as a protected area,
right,
was a much smaller area, and adjacent to it, immediately separated only by a road, was a mining lease. No, I am 25 years involved in protected area management. When we do a protected area, it is a process that looks at all its interests, stakeholders, and we have to put a buffer area.
Yeah, but Robert, I'm not disputing that. You know what I'm saying is that I cannot understand why there was an agreement.
No, there wasn't.
I'm telling you, right, because I was involved in the process. And I know an agreement.
Boundary here, no?
Of course.
With the boundary,
of course.
That's not correct.
What I'm hearing is that the boundary that was
they
announced
presented a boundary.
That was agreed.
They presented a boundary several years ago, which is the boundary that they are arguing now. And they presented a boundary based on the factual knowledge of what is karst limestone.
So
what has been announced is different from what they have supported.
If it was announced a few months ago, and nothing, and nobody said anything.
No,
then
why? No, immediately it was announced. People said that cannot work. So we have to get the facts straight. No, the boundary, what the people presented several years, not recently,
Yes.
And even the university boundaries, these were larger areas because they know that you can't mine here and have a protected area. The breeze, you can't tell the breeze where to blow the dust, and you can't manage that on the water system. You need a large. We did the Blue and Jonquil Mountains National Park. The buffer area is several kilometers.
So let me talk about the reality of bauxite in other locations that might support what we're hearing.
But I don't agree with what has been said.
And perhaps you cannot disagree by answering my question. If we look at what's happening in Nain, the people of Nain, the residents are talking about chronic issues, health issues, respiratory issues. The bauxite company there is having to shell out money to be able to pay medical bills for the people who live in the community. These are things that they are not able to control. Does that Nain experience give credence to what you're hearing our environmentalists say or protection specialists?
Why is it that you say that these are things that are not capable of being controlled?
Well, it's not being controlled in Nain.
It's not being controlled, but that's not to say it cannot be controlled. Mm-hmm. So yes, mining has some adverse consequences. No question about that. You can't avoid that, right? The country has to decide whether it wants a mining industry or not. If it wants a mining industry, some adverse consequences will follow. We mitigate against them as best we can. We're not always successful, as might be the case in Nain. Second thing is, to your specific input, do not compare Noranda bauxite with a refinery. Right. Noranda does not refine bauxite. We use no caustic soda, for instance. So one of the misinformations in the public domain is that Noranda has contaminated the water and the land with caustic. We don't use caustic. We're not a refinery.
Nobody said that.
It's in the public domain, Robert. It's in the public domain.
They're not arguing that.
Okay. Why are we haggling over the square footage of protected area. Would it matter to Naranda if that protected area geographic domain was increased? Would it matter significantly to your bottom line?
Yes.
Tell me how.
Absolutely. One of the things that is consequential on the existing protected area, the 75,000 hectares of land that now comprise the protected area, is that it sterilizes over 260 million tons of bauxite. That's 40 years of mining. Okay? The wider you make that boundary is the less bauxite that you have to mine. You will not hear the bauxite companies argue that 260 million tons of bauxite has been sterilized. You won't hear that because the government has made a decision. The bauxite companies abide by it. We don't quarrel over it. Of course, we would want more bauxite. But if the government says, hey, this is what you have because it's in the best interest of the country, we understand that.
So if you give them the protected area that they want, this project is no longer profitable or attractive to Naranda?
It may not be viable. And the issue is you have induced people to invest money based on what you say they have the ability to mine. No. You've given them an area
So therefore, Robert
has a clear choice.
Yeah, but Robert, I'm coming to that choice when I ask this question now. All right? I have always believed that, and I'm playing devil's advocate with you, right? That one of the greatest negative impacts on the environment is poverty. We see what happened in Haiti, right? We see what happened with Goat Island, right?
You're wrong about that, though.
What, poverty is not a negative impact?
You're wrong. You said the greatest negative impact.
I said one of the greatest negative impacts.
Well, I will tell you, when you destroy the water management system in the middle of Jamaica, remember I'm talking about 40 rivers and streams and outlet, 40% of the island's water system, right? You can't tell me that if you understand how the carpet works, once you start to open up the forest and change the humidity, you change the environment completely. Secondly, the water systems are going to be impacted by mining because they're mining in the Abconic Depression, they're mining between the hills. That is the water system.
So you're saying
talking about permanent generational damage.
You're saying that the government and their technocrats don't know what they're doing when they define the boundaries.
No,
they're a set of incompetent people up there.
No, it's not about knowledge. Many years ago, when they were doing the ponds, Red Mud Lake, they knew that if you don't line the bottom, it's going to travel into your water system. Hold on a little.
I want to hear.
Understand the point. It's about the choice that some companies make, right? Are you going to put people's well-being and interest first, or are you going to put your capital investment first?
Are you calling the government greedy?
Right? I'm just describing to you that many people have been negatively impacted by the operations of bauxite.
Yeah, but what
mining.
I'm saying, Robert, this is the answer I want from you. Are you saying they're incompetent or they're greedy?
No.
The government?
There are other choices. Before I got to malice or anything, right? I'm saying that the interests of the people are not being put first. That is what I'm saying. I'm saying, so I can't say the government is greedy.
Because they're greedy.
I don't want to use that word. That would be your word.
Which word you prefer?
I need to respond to this.
Yes, and I need to hear. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that the government is not putting the interests of the people first when they do this.
I need to respond to this. Basil Fernandez, well recognized as the foremost
water resource
expert in the island, has declared that 50 years of bauxite mining has had no adverse effect on flow or quality of water.
That's not true. I have documentation. I did a South Coast Master Plan, and one of the problems, Kirkvine water travel from Mandeville almost to the south of Clarendon. We know. That is why they now have to seal the thing. Then you have people who have respiratory problems. Then you go to the meeting, people show you they have to put cancerous things out in the neck because of the effect of these things.
How do we strike the balance? Are you open to bauxite mining anywhere in the parish?
You see, you have to be very responsible. If you have a water system that is decisive for the future of the country, and you have a system of topsoil that is critical for production in the middle of the island. Remember now, you have a lot of industries on the coast now, all them tourist industries on the north and agriculture on the south.
And so I get the objection. What I want to understand is, are you open to bauxite mining anywhere?
I'm going to answer you now. For you, if your bottom line is to preserve those services, right, then you have to do the scientific work to see what is required to make sure.
But they have done that.
Stop a little, is to do the scientific requirements to show what is required.
So that has not been done?
For protected area management, no.
So therefore, you're saying that if it has been done, what you're saying is that the government was, and their technocrats were incompetent in what they did.
Irresponsible. I'll give you an example. You can't issue a special mining lease, 1733, and your EIA has not been done. To me, that is reckless and irresponsible. Environmental impact assessment. Okay. That was not done. There's a process where you do that, and then the stakeholders have a chance.
But you're saying it was done.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
It's not done.
The SML bylaw certainly can be issued. What cannot happen is you cannot mine until the EIA has been done and approved by NEPA.
So
that is to come.
That is to come.
No,
but
to me that prejudices the case.
You take that on.
You don't issue a lease until you should not. Because NEPA stopped. Remember, it's not only that NEPA stopped the mining activity. Am I wrong or am I right?
You're wrong.
They didn't issue a stop order?
You're wrong.
What did they do?
We have not begun mining in SML 173.
No, what did they issue a stop order on NEPA?
I don't know that.
Let me go down the road of this environmental assessment. Let us say you do this environmental assessment, which I have a difficulty with, because you have no...
You have an interest.
You have an interest. You have a vested interest in the economic activity and making this thing happen. What assurances do the people of Jamaica have that your disclosure will be full and complete and in the best interest of the nation?
You have NEPA, who is a regulatory body.
So they review.
They review and mandate what you have to do.
No, that's what review.
That's what they do.
Is to be a
so what
public...
Robert is saying is he has no confidence in the government that they've done the scientific work. He has no confidence in NEPA that they will regulate properly. That's what he's saying.
What I
Robert.
said is, in terms of a protected area management, we have not seen presented what are the requirements to sustainably manage the area. For example, if that was done, you couldn't use a road as a buffer zone between mining. You can't be mining on one side of the road and then you have a protected area on the other side.
Perhaps you should wait. What if you wait for this environmental assessment and the plans?
Wait in terms of what?
I'm saying perhaps the protest action at this point is premature, because if they are mandated to do an environmental assessment that is to be monitored and managed by NEPA, would you be comfortable if the plans that are put in front of you take into consideration the future watershed issues, the future supply of...
But they've already determined where 173 is.
Yes.
And if you put mining there, it's going to destroy the service.
Anywhere in there.
Robert, let me ask you this.
173.
Robert,
mining is happening in the cockpit, you know.
Robert, let me
ask
it this way. Ask it this way. You said that the government, in your words, is irresponsible in the way they have defined the boundary, right? And the process.
The process.
Right? Let me ask you now. You said that it's going to cause a problem. What is the basis of your opinion then?
Okay. The functions, the services that we get from the cockpit.
You did a scientific study.
Right? The services that we get from it. It's been well documented, right? And he knows the information.
No, I don't. Don't presume that.
No,
I go by science, and I go.
That's what I'm saying. The reports. There have been several studies. University and the Dale Weber report, and then there are several documents.
Dale Weber's report says that the environmentalists agreed to the boundaries.
No.
That's what Dale Weber's report
well, he
says.
can say that, but it wasn't agreed to, and it's a different boundary from what they have.
So you're conveniently agreeing with Dale Weber on some things and disagreeing with him on others.
I'm disagreeing on it. I'm agreeing with him on the points that it has to do in terms of the functions and services at cockpit.
But remember, let me finish. But as David said, does he have points in there that you disagree with in the report?
No, but that's
No, I'm asking you because I want to know if you agree with half it and disagree with
No,
the
I'm
other
telling
half.
you the points that are important. When you have a protected area, right, the services that we're talking about has to be tied to the terrain, the topography of the area. There's a certain topography. You know where the cockpit country is based on the topography, right? And the services are tied to the topography. So when you put mining lease adjacent and into the inside of that topography, you're going to have an impact on the water system. That's just how it is. So the people secondly, you
yeah, but Robert, I'm asking what's the basis of that? Because if you're going to say that government has been irresponsible and not competent,
I give you an example of what was irresponsible.
What is the basis? Is there a report that we can go to?
Yes, you can go to all the hydrological.
What's the name
I'll give you an
report?
example. There's a report that was done which showed you all the hydrological points in it.
By who?
It's in the forest. It's in the forest report. It's in Dale Weber's report. It shows you.
That's not what the National Water Resources people are saying.
It shows you. I'm not discussing this. I'm telling you what's on the map. It shows you all the caves and all the water systems, and many of them are outside of what is proposed as a boundary. Now, if you understand the cockpit, I'll give you an example. Quashie River Sink, or Dornoch Head in this case, is the source of the Rio Beno. That is going to be impacted by the mining.
No. Dornoch is outside of the CCPA.
No, allow him.
But it is not within the mining lease.
Listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying that the areas that are being mined drain into Dornoch. From Fremont, all of that area there drains into the Dornoch. You see, what happened in the high altitude area have all of these drains, Black River, Martha, Rio Beno, right? They connect from the center to the coast. If you impact those channels that have been defined by millions of years of flow, right? What is going to happen? You could be caught in disaster.
What happens if you don't stick to the environmental protections that you ought to? What if he's right and we see bleed in some of our river waters?
We are constantly monitoring.
You can't correct. When
we
you
constantly
mine, you can't correct. That's
Robert,
the point.
I'll allow you to answer.
Robert's comments are largely emotional, and I understand that. We have to deal with science, and we have to deal with science, not because we want to bulldoze down the place, but this country needs the jobs and the revenue that bauxite produces.
But we need water, and it's already short.
Let me go further. There are 13 riverheads. All 13 are within the CCPA. All
protected
13
area.
are within the protected area. Not one is outside.
Those are the heads of the river.
Yeah,
what
Dornoch
are the rest
is outside
of the river?
It's groundwater. There's no river. There's no surface river anywhere in the mining lease. Neither 165 or 173. There is no surface water.
I'll give you the last word.
Hang on.
Okay, all right, no. And I do want to allow you. Yes.
Hang on.
Groundwater?
50 years of mining. Basil Fernandez says there is no evidence that the water has been either qualitatively or quantitatively affected. Reynolds mined above the Duns River. No evidence. So I don't know, other than an emotional task. I don't know where the scientific
The people who live in these areas will tell you that they have lost water quality. They can't build in some areas. No, remember, the area that is proposed in 173, people live there, These are communities, long-established communities. Plus, you're going into maroon territory. People live there, so what are you going to do with these people?
Bauxite has a history of relocating people, though.
Well, what happens to when you move somebody from their land, separate them from the land, you put them into an area where they can't produce. These lands no longer can produce. In fact, right now, this is not a money issue, because right now there's a 1.9 billion annual exemption under the bauxite levy. Why is that money not coming to us? How you can do it in a country where you don't have beds in the hospital?
Not sure.
This discussion certainly needs a part two. Yes. Gentlemen, we thank you for your time. Robert Carr, David Wankin, thank you very much for talking.
You're most welcome.
We take a break, folks. When we come back, it's more on point.
Dodge & Global Marketing Strategy Consulting. Marketing isn't a department, it's a system. Having an integrated and cohesive marketing plan allows each marketing technique to support the others, thereby creating a synergy of branding and growth for your business. Dodge & Global can assist you in making smart decisions with lasting value in regard to the following key decisions. Determine if there is a paying market for your products and services. Craft long-term and short-term marketing goals. Define marketing campaigns. Create marketing strategies. Select powerful marketing techniques to reach your audience. Choose a brand and image that reflects your core message. Design marketing materials. Design internet marketing strategies. Track marketing results to determine the strongest techniques. Because it's so important to create an integrated marketing strategy that will bring in business. Get advice and mentoring from people who are already successful marketing experts. Our team can help you make smarter, more effective decisions. Let's have a conversation. Contact us at email info@dodgen.global. Website https://dodgen.global.
Welcome back to On Point. Forget house and land, apartments, that's where it's at. But is there an oversupply of apartments in Kingston? Take a look at some of the more recent developments.
The face of Kingston and St. Andrew is changing. That declaration came from Prime Minister Andrew Holness last October as he opened the brand new 10-story apartment complex called 20 South. The apartment is near halfway through in St. Andrew, and the government says it fits seamlessly into the administration's plan to change the corporate area's skyline. At 10 stories high, 20 South is the tallest residential complex in St. Andrew. But there are already requests from developers to build high-rises up to 20 stories. Few months after 20 South was opened, the Guardian Group forked out $4 billion to invest in its own apartment complex called the Cambridge, which has 176 units. The Cambridge is being developed on 3 acres of Guardian Life's property on Musgrave Avenue and is located in the prime residential area on the outskirts of the Golden Triangle. Ground was broken in March 2019, and by mid-April, half the units were already sold. It's not only private developers who are contributing to reshaping the Kingston and St. Andrew skyline. The NHT is also involved. The Ruthven Towers apartment complex, which is being built by the trust, has already racked up a bill of over $5 billion. When completed, the complex is expected to have some 238 units.
Joining us now to talk about trends in the real estate market is Realtor and past president of the Realtors Association, Edwin Wint. Eddie.
Sir Wint, good to see you.
Yeah, man, good to see you.
It must be really good to be you right now with all the developments going up. Realtor is the dream job at this point, no?
Don't listen to all the rumors you hear.
but it's good, right? It's good.
The market is buoyant, yes.
But let's talk a little bit about the actual pricing of some of the things that you're seeing. Are they value for money right now? Are they overpriced?
Okay, the market is wide, 14 parishes. So if we're talking about corporate area and you want to narrow it down, you do have some good value for money. But some of the new builds are priced at a bit of a premium. One has to be discerning and look at it carefully.
Let's talk about where the value is right now. If I'm supposed to find a property in Kingston that's a steal, that's a good buy, what would that look like?
That would look like maybe something over 10 years old, maybe a townhouse in an area that's maybe not as well sought after right now, but it's still a good, stable location. And you're still finding properties that have immediate equity in it.
And you have that kind of inventory on the market now?
You do have a few, but they are very scarce.
But Eddie, there's still a significant demand at the lower to lower middle income because we've had a significant shortage over the years. Eh?
Yes.
So I mean, what you might find is that a lot of the people who were first-time owners, they're now trying to step up, and then people are trying to fill that bottom slot.
That's true.
But on that vein, what does that mean? Poor people shouldn't live in Kingston. At some point, we're not going to have any housing in Kingston that's going to be affordable to middle-income, poor people.
Well, that's for the government to answer. But the private sector developers are responding to the market, but the land price predicts where you can build what.
Right.
And so they're finding that they have to move out of the central areas in order to get the land price, which can afford the selling prices. So you're talking Old Harbour and moving out St. Catherine's side.
I have to push back on that
so
point. I have to push back on that point because plots of land that traditionally were single-family dwellings may be double. Yes? One of those Meadowbrook houses that have a small side and big yard space. A lot of those developments, a lot of those houses are being turned into multiple unit developments, 4 stories high, 30 units. A developer can recover the cost of that land if he's able to do something affordable on that, no?
Well, what is happening is that they're bidding up the prices now. Now that the Provisional Development Order has increased the densities, so there is more competition in the market for the available lots.
Repeat what you just said. There's now a mandate to increase density?
There is a change in there's a Provisional Development Order. And in that Provisional Development Order, some of the densities most of the densities in the corporate area have been increased.
The allowable
densities have increased.
So whereas at one point, say 5 years ago, you couldn't put a 30-unit apartment complex on one of these single-unit lots.
Legally.
Right. But you can do it legally
now.
now.
You can.
Yes, in principle, yes.
But Eddie, there's something wrong with that, you know. I mean, my view is that if you go to cities like Tokyo, you know, Hong Kong, New York, even New York, right? You're going to find that within the more prime areas, you're going to have these high-rise buildings, right? And the rooms are, and the places are very small. The challenge, one of the challenges that we have, right, is that we have failed to develop the highway to move out of the town. So it makes it look like a bother for people to get into Kingston. But I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that because 60% of the population live here anyway, so you expect demand to go up, isn't that so?
Yeah, in principle, yes.
So people are moving away from wanting a yard and somewhere for the dog to run and 2 mango trees in the back to go for an apartment.
But I don't think it's not people don't want a yard, you know, Patria. It's just that people can't afford it.
I want it. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Well, what they're doing is moving out of the corporate area to get that.
Yeah.
And you're going to find more of that happening.
And you find that happens in major cities also.
Correct.
I mean, in New York, for example, you know, come back to that. You know, there's a concentration of high-rise buildings and, you know, that sort of thing. If you want a yard space, you move out.
Let's go back to that price matter. Who can afford some of these listings? I mean, you look through the real estate listings, you know, ads in the paper, or you go on a website, go on the MLS. You see a matchbox, and the price for that matchbox, you're thinking, surely nobody can afford this. And then you go back and you see it sold. Who is affording these luxury apartments?
A cross-section of people. You have regular hardworking people who are moving up on the property ladder, selling something.
Like a kidney?
And moving up. Pardon?
Like a kidney?
Not sure I understand.
Selling something like a kidney.
Oh.
Because what would you sell to be able to afford the price point at which some of these are being sold
what
for?
you're doing is you're selling, maybe you might have cleared the mortgage or a substantial amount of the mortgage. And so you're getting a certain amount of principal to put deposit on the new one.
So you're benefiting from the appreciation in the real estate market with your existing property.
That's correct.
Fair.
And also, you're in more joint purchasing.
Right.
So accessing the NHT benefits and pooling together to make these investments. Auntie and Granny, you know, who didn't foreign, all pitching in. So it's a mixture of people that buy.
On that matter, the NHT though, did you notice in your experience that when the changes were made to the limits of the NHT, that sort of helped the market to get more active? Yeah,
there was an uptick. There was an uptick in the market. There was also an uptick in values in that range. Because 6.5 times 2, 13. So you found that anything that was valued maybe at around 10 to 11
went to 13.
Moved to 13. That's just how the market moves.
And let's talk about those numbers, because the interest rates are doing a great thing. There's apparently this race to the bottom. We can all recall when we had double-digit interest rates for housing. Now we're down to as low as what?
6.99.
In commercial banks.
Yes.
But as the interest rate is coming down, the prices are going up.
Yes.
Are we still able to achieve that balancing act where a modest salary for even two people can find housing in Kingston City, in the capital?
Right. What they have to be doing is changing their expectation. So they can't afford what they would have wanted to before, but they're finding something else in the market that they can afford.
Or going outside of Kingston.
Going outside of Kingston.
And with the highways being developed now.
That's correct.
I mean, like for example, look at an area like Caymanas. Caymanas, a beautiful scheme, and the demand is there. I mean, that's where a lot of people would love to live. They have yard space. And
lots of developments also going up in Old Harbour. People are hitting the highway.
And there are lots of plans for more housing in the Caymanas area.
Let me ask, can we take more? And I particularly have a difficulty with the infrastructure side. Water. NHWMA can collect more garbage from all of these townhouses that are going up. Well, are we able to keep up from the infrastructure side with all of this high density, intense, multi-story living?
Well, that's what we have a government for, to make these kind of plans, forward planning, to ensure that everything is in sync. You'll find that, speaking of infrastructure, the road improvements that's stated, which will commence going on the St. Thomas side.
Right.
That's going to drive another opening up of opportunities, because when it reduces the commute time and the wear and tear in your vehicle to get there, that's where the action is going to be in the next 2 years.
And there's a lot of undeveloped land out to that area.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Where do you see the next 5 years in real estate? What's going to be hot? So you talk about St. Thomas. Is real estate still going to be a best bet for your investment dollar 5 years from now?
Well, the realtor will tell you that real estate will always be the best investment. And I'll just go back maybe 10, 11 years when you had the meltdown in the US property market, and we never had that experience. So our market is fairly resilient, our economy is fairly resilient regardless of how bad it gets. You'll probably have a slowdown, but certainly not to the point where prices start dropping and you get a negative equity in your investment.
That will never happen.
No, I never said never.
And this is what I'm asking.
Yes.
This is a reality in some US states, where you might buy a house today and sell it in 5 years for less than you bought it for. You just take the best amount that you can possibly find. With the increasing Jamaican real estate price, do we run the risk of bottoming out on the price of these apartments and getting to a place where people say, I will not pay that anymore, and we start having to sell for less than we bought for?
Depends on what you bought for. And you should know when you're buying to use your realtor and to get your comparative analysis to know what's happening in the market, and don't go for above what the market should be.
But right now people are paying more than valuation.
Well, I think that's the point you're making, that a lot of people buy based on emotions, and if you don't get your realtor, then you don't get the
But purely out of desperation, if you know you want to live in Kingston 6, people are willing to pay more than the valuator comes back and says, this thing is really worth X. But because the inventory is small or extremely pricey, people are paying more than valuation amount.
Okay, and that's risk. So you're willing to take the risk and you do it.
But the other thing though, Eddie, I mean, I hear that there's a difficulty selling things at the high end, the very high end. Mm-hmm. But the low end, where the demand, we still have a lot of unfulfilled demand. And I think that's why the real estate market didn't take a hit like the US. But the other thing I want you to think about, when I did some comparisons the other day, even when people said that prices were going up, in US dollar terms, they were the same thing.
Well, I was gonna answer your question about that, to say sometime in real terms, especially yes. Because we do valuations as well. Yes. So we have found that if a property was valued in US, maybe said 8 years ago, in some locations, and because of the movement of the exchange rate, I've seen where when they're ready to sell, they have to sell for less than the amount in the US yes. At the time. But in J dollar equivalent, they'll be making a fortune.
Right.
I take it back. So, the realtors aren't the ones who are making the bring stroke of money. It's the developers. We hear a conversation that those are the ones who are making supernormal profits. Are they taking home a wad of cash? Can they can they sell for cheaper?
That's a difficult question because it comes back to how efficient, and you start from the land cost. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they overbid in expectation for the land. In fact, sometimes they land bank. And so they buy it for 5-10 years in advance.
And hold it.
Mm-hmm. But there's a cost for holding, and so they want to recoup for that. Because if you wait until you need it, you won't have any. So some of them land bank, and so they have to, in order to keep that supply chain going, they have to do some creative things as well.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yes.
We thank you for talking to us. There's a lot more for us to figure out with this real estate market. You know more than we do. We take a break. When we come back, we continue the conversation right here on Point.
Crow Jamaica Risk Management Services, RMS. Risk management has become indispensable to a company's business operations and management strategy in this complex environment nowadays. Crow Jamaica risk management experts help to turn every risk into an opportunity. We are experienced in providing customized solutions to manage risks and increase transparency and accountability of the companies. Our core services include internal audit, internal control review, corporate governance, corporate compliance, etc. Our team can help you make smarter, more effective decisions. Let's have a conversation. Contact us at email people@crowjm.com, website www.crowjm.com.
Welcome back to On Point. The Cockpit Country is home to much of Jamaica's endemic flora and fauna. It's also the source of much of our water. Take a look at the numbers.
According to the Water Resources Authority, 28% of Jamaica's safe water is from the Cockpit Country, along with 31% of unused water resources. Over 150 plant species have been identified in the Cockpit Country, of which 101 are endemic to the area. There are over 500 species of ferns in the Cockpit Country, more than any other rainforest in the tropics. Approximately 550 species of land snails have been identified in Jamaica thus far, with most occurring in the Cockpit Country. The Cockpit Country features 27 of the 28 known remaining endemic bird species in Jamaica and 79 of the 100 total species identified on the island. At least 94 of Jamaica's 125 butterflies are found in the Cockpit Country, including all endemics. There are 2 butterfly species endemic to the Cockpit Country. The area represents the last refuge for the 18 species of native frogs on the island. All 7 species of snake in Jamaica are found in the Cockpit Country.
And our On Point team hit the streets and asks, do you think any mining should take place in the Cockpit Country?
I don't think so, because we really need the trees to get more rainfall in our country, and I believe cutting down the trees would stop all of that.
Well, if there's anything that we can make out of it, don't want to go in the reserve part of it, but if there's anything that will be available to us? Yes, I think so.
No, I totally don't agree. One is the watershed conservation area. I don't think there is enough control or parameters set to sustain and prevent contamination. Evidence is in St. Elizabeth, where persons currently living there are having health issues. I don't think the financial benefits outweigh the natural resources or the benefit to the human resources either.
If it's beneficial to the economy and if it doesn't bother any surrounding communities, that would cause a problem in the future.
Hell no! Simple as that. Allow the people them place. See what I say? Either that or you do all that you need to do, that the feasibility study about it, everything, go in and speak to the community. Can't go in at the people in place just now, man, and dig out. When you dig it out and you don't dig it out, nothing more can grow there, you know. And if people know that. So anywhere that you mine, nothing else can grow there after when you're done. So what you gonna do with the people in place? No, man, it need more investigation. It need more, have to be more knowledgeable in making them this decision there. Draw back that license there where whoever have it. That's a draw back, man, and make we examine the thing good, man. Come on, man.
As far as I understand, it's not going on in the cockpit country. You have boundaries for mining. So therefore, it provides jobs for people. So I don't see why it should not happen.
I don't think I'm adequately informed as to the ramifications of doing such thing. I know mining is very important to Jamaica with foreign exchange, etc. But if there are designated areas for mining, then why not? But the government and the experts would have to give you a good answer. The regular Joe like me on the road, I don't think it's wise to say yes or no without being properly informed.
No, I don't think any mining should be done in the cockpit country because it can deplete the natural habitats of some of the faunas and birds that found nowhere else in the world. So that's the reason I don't think any mining should be done there.
No, I don't think mining should be done in the cockpit country, but the better question based on the conversation, is it really the cockpit country? That is really the argument, from what I've been hearing. Is it really the cockpit country? If it is, no. If it is not, then why not?
Corporate restructuring services. In today's evolving commercial and economic environment, businesses are continually seeking opportunities to manage operating costs and tax positions, as well as contain cash expenditures. Entity structuring can help achieve these goals, but often presents many challenges for multinational corporations. In addition, the OECD's Base Erosion and Profit Shifting (BEPS) proposals are expected to impact the bottom line of affected organizations and result in some business restructuring. Crow Jamaica delivers an integrated approach to clients' corporate and reorganization needs. Services include simplifying group structures, executing domestic and cross-border transactions including mergers, demergers, disposals, and company migrations, transferring assets and business units, aligning legal structures to business models, establishing national or regional hubs, converting subsidiary company structures to branch structures and vice versa, integrating legal structures following a merger or acquisition, providing practical advice and assistance throughout the planning, development, and implementation phases of corporate reorganizations. Crow Jamaica assists businesses and other advisors in developing and implementing efficient, cost-effective legal structures and business operating models. Our team can help you make smarter, more effective decisions. Let's have a conversation. Contact us at email people@crowjm.com. Website www.crowjm.com.
Boy, Dennis, that bauxite conversation is frustrating but important.
Yeah. It's important, but you know, I mean, the government has done their study, right? David mentioned the whole thing about Basil Fernandez and what he said. And I get where the environmentalists are coming from. But what they also need to come with is some scientific evidence to counter what has been done. Because unless you do that, then you're really just going to have this he said, she said thing going on.
Absolutely. And I mean, bauxite has had a long history.
Yeah.
You hear a 50-year history in Jamaica, and there are other families, there are other communities who will tell you what bauxite has done for their own growth and development. The question is whether or not as a nation we are willing to sacrifice the watershed for that kind of economic gain. Are we compromising the watershed?
And that's a question that we need to answer, because nobody wants to compromise the watershed. But let us get some scientific evidence to show what the situation is. Because one of the greatest negative impacts on the environment is poverty. You know, look what happened in Haiti. They cut down all the trees and where they live and all that, and it creates a massive problem.
And to be fair, the fact that NEPA is the entity that is to be the watchdog is one of the concerns that some people will have as well. There have been other instances, even with bauxite, where people have accused NEPA of being negligent, of accused NEPA of not being able to do the kind of monitoring work that's required to keep people safe. And so that in and of itself is also going to be a concern that people will have.
But you know, what we should do then is get the information, put it out there and show where NEPA has been faulted, and then you take action based on that. But this anecdotal thing, you know, that you're just talking based on emotions, that's the problem we have. I remember Goat Island. You know, we have a nice island out there now and no development.
It's a lot of poverty for the iguanas. That's what it is though. Let's shift conversations to that matter of real estate in City Kingston. That real estate continues to climb in terms of price, but does it continue to climb in terms of value? There are some who believe that an apartment in Kingston right now is just overpriced.
In US dollar terms, I don't think so. And I think that is it, because there's still a demand at the low level. And if you look in US dollar terms, remember our dollar now is 140.
But the demand is there, but the real estate is not. The kind of price point that you're talking about, where people need to buy homes, where most people can afford to buy homes, that inventory doesn't exist in City Kingston.
It doesn't, and people are going to have to go outside of Kingston. And that's why the roads are so important, because if you can live, for example, in Caymanas and come to Kingston in 10 minutes, why you want to get a house in Kingston?
I'm going to come back to my infrastructure concerns. We have to build out the road network, because right now traffic in Kingston is ridiculous, and the more high rises, the more people are going to be living in that. When we talk about the population density, how do we move them? And water. Right now people still flushing toilet for number 2. How do you put all of these people in these apartment complexes? They're going up higher and higher, 4 and 5 stories. NWC is pushing back and saying, I cannot guarantee that I can pump water to the 3rd, 4th, or 5th floor. Where do you leave those people? To build out a bath pan in them expensive apartments?
We have to develop the infrastructure, definitely. I mean, it's important. I mean, and I think the work that has been done on the roads and what NWC has been doing, I think is, you know, we're all looking forward to it. The only problem with it, I think, was that NWA didn't manage it properly. You know, so they just didn't consider the people at Jamaica when they were doing that.
There is a benefit, certainly, though, to those who would have bought into real estate early, who have those older homes, who have the wide expanse of yard, who can now sell and upgrade.
Yes.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for On Point this week. We've got to say thank you to the very hardworking crew who make this show happen, and thanks to you for always tuning in. Until next week, I'm Patria Kay.
And I'm Dennis Sean.
See you next time.
On Point was brought to you by Crow Jamaica.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters. Call us at 876-618-2870 or email us at sales@batvja.com. Business Access TV, serious about business.
Why do we travel? What is it exactly that excites us so? You know, traveling is not just about seeing new landscapes, but about interacting with new people and experiencing different cultures. Welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I am Theodore Henry. This week's program kicks off with health as Get the Facts tackles vector control measures. Stay tuned as the magazine unfolds.
Hurricanes can strike at any time. In the event of one, be prepared to act quickly. If a hurricane watch or warning has been issued, review your home disaster response plan. Map out likely routes to evacuate if your home is at risk and confirm with relatives or friends you plan to stay with. Also, confirm the location of the nearest shelter. Check your emergency supplies and restock if necessary. Remember, disasters do happen, so be prepared.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness officially launched its Enhanced Vector Control Program in August as it continues the fight against mosquito-borne illnesses. Here to tell us more is the program's manager, Shireen Huntley-Jones.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm your host, Nanthros Campbell. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has increased activities under its vector control program in a bid to reduce the mosquito population and breeding sites. An island-wide campaign is ongoing, and Shireen Huntley-Jones, program manager for the vector control program, is our guest today. Mrs. Huntley-Jones, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Good. Please tell us what are the activities under the Vector Control Program and what are the coordinated initiatives that are used to deal with these activities?
All right. Every year during the months of June to September, the ministry enhances its Vector Control Program. And what this means, in addition to our ongoing routine activities, we employ over 1,000 temporary workers to augment the activities on the ground. The ministry enhances its program during this time of the year because for Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean, if you're going to have an outbreak of one of our arboviruses, be it dengue or Zika virus or chikungunya, it tends to occur during the months of October to January of the following year. And so we enhance our program 3 months prior to in an effort to reduce the possibility of that outbreak. So during the months of June to August, September, we take on 1,000 workers who are trained and deployed right across the island in all our 13 parishes in what we call our high-risk areas to carry out various activities.
So the activities would include?
So they are tasked with 3 main responsibilities.
Yes.
One, they are to build awareness at the community level. In fact, the persons are selected from their own community, so they're familiar with the householders. So they are to build awareness. Secondly, they're asked to look for and destroy breeding sites. And for those breeding sites that they find that they cannot destroy, then they are also trained to treat those breeding sites.
Yes. Well, tell us about the importance of the program and like some of the risks that would be posed to persons who are exposed to mosquito bites and so on.
So as we know, there are 3 endemic mosquito-borne diseases now in Jamaica.
And they're now endemic.
Yes, means that we have them all the time. So since 2014, we have had chikungunya, which is now endemic. Since 2016, Zika has been endemic. And of course, we have always had dengue. So we have 3 vector-borne diseases. mosquito-borne diseases that are endemic. And they're all arboviruses.
Right. And talk to us about the training for the persons who are employed under this program.
So the employment of the 1,000 persons have become a part of our overall vector control program. And so we wanted to have a cohort of persons that we can select from every year that is very knowledgeable about the program. So in 2016, when our Honorable Minister, Dr. Tufton, came on, he asked that not only should we employ the persons, but to have them trained. And so we have been collaborating with HEART NTA in the training and certification of these programs. And an entire program was developed for this category of workers. And so approximately 800 have been trained so far and certified. And we will continue to do this because, as you know, persons leave the program, they become employed otherwise, or they go to school. So as we get new persons in, we continue through the collaboration with HEART NTA to train them.
Right. Now, these vector control aids, as you call them,
right.
Talk to us about which communities they're going to and so on.
Okay, so we have deployed them to what we call our high-risk communities. So based on our historical data in terms of Aedes aegypti infestation, based on our historical data relating to transmission of cases, based on what we call some environmental parameters, we have determined high-risk communities, areas in which we're likely to have transmission. Yes. And so the workers have been deployed to those communities. We have identified since 2018 534 of those communities, and so the workers are deployed right across the island in those 534 communities.
Yes.
In addition to those communities, they are working in our urban centers, they're working in our markets, and some other critical areas that we're likely to see transmission in.
Tell us about some of the breeding sites. Where are some of the places that you'll find breeding sites mostly?
So you know that we have always said that the Aedes aegypti mosquito is a domesticated mosquito. In fact, we do have another vector of the 3 viruses in Jamaica. It's called Aedes albopictus. So we have 2 vectors now in Jamaica that are able to transmit these 3 diseases. And they're domesticated mosquitoes, meaning that they're found breeding in and around where we live, play, and work, in containers. And so the containers that we're finding that are most prominent in our Jamaican setting is the 45 to 55 gallon drum. Every household seems to have a 45, 55 gallon drum, and those are our main breeding sites. Tires are our second. And you know, the small containers that lie around the home tend to lend themselves to breeding as well.
Right. So if people have to have these drums, what should they do to prevent the mosquitoes from breeding?
Right. So the first strategy that we ask persons to do is to cover those drums. Once the drums are covered, then the mosquito will not have access to breeding. We do understand that there are communities that they do not have piped water, and so they collect water from rainfall. So there is a resistance in covering. So we ask that you cover with a meshed material that allows the water to go in but will prevent the mosquito to go in. There's another strategy that they can use, just a little oil and pour a little oil on the surface of the water. What this does, it suffocates the immature stage of the mosquito, and so you won't have adults coming through.
Right. So how are the communities reacting to your work in the various areas? How are they reacting?
It's a mixed reaction. We have seen not much behavior change as it relates to the management of our water container, which is very disappointing to us. Because as I said before, the Aedes aegypti and the Aedes albopictus mosquito, they only tend to breed in these containers that are found in and around where we are. And if persons begin to take action to deal and manage properly with these containers, then we will see a reduction in the transmission of these diseases. So we're not seeing the levels of behavior change that we would like to see. In addition, there seems to be a little bit resistance of having our workers come into the homes. They have reported to us some violent activities against them. Some persons have been refusing to let them inside. And so this is also hampering our ability to be impactful as we would like to be.
Right, so people are hostile, which means they don't understand the work that you're doing, they don't value it.
Yes.
And so what are you going to do about that?
So the Ministry of Health, having received this report, we're going to be doing an educational campaign to explain to persons why the workers are there, why the workers need to access the home, because they need to come inside to search and to be able to point out to the householder where the issues are. So it's very important. So we're going to be engaged in a media campaign explaining the importance of having the workers access the home environment.
Yes. Let's take a break now, and we'll continue with more information on the Ministry of Health and Wellness Vector Control Program. Please stay with us.
If you no want pop down and fenke, you fi burn mosquito and run with dengue. So no make water cycle in open container. For them we read up under the danger. Usher them out, run them away. Slap them with the zapper and down them with spray. Use mosquito net and mosquito screen. Protect your household, now make them come in. If you no want pop down and fenke, if you burn mosquito and run with dengue. If pain lick your head and your joints and your eye, and you want fever vomit and your temperature high, it could be dengue, don't hesitate. See a doctor, don't self-medicate. For some painkiller can make you bleed and you will try to recover and no succeed. We no want pop down and fenke. We fi burn mosquito and run with dengue. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back to Get the Facts with Shireen Huntley-Jones, Program Manager for the Vector Control Program in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Tell us, so the fogging has been going on. Yes. How often do you do it, and how do you decide on the communities?
Well, under our enhanced program, fogging activity takes place every night. So we're fogging 7 days per week. We are focused based in areas depending on two things: the levels of the mosquito infestation and also from where we're getting reports of cases. So the schedule is made up based on those two parameters, and the activity is carried out every night. They're carried out every night.
Every night where?
Right across the country in all our 13 parishes. There's fogging.
Oh, all right. Speak to us about how the fogging is done and what should we be doing while this activity is taking place.
All right, so the fogging is done during the times of what we call dusk, just in that gray period. We tend to do it at that time because a lot of the species of mosquitoes that we want to target are very active at that time. However, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which we know is a day-biting mosquito, by the time it gets dark, that mosquito tends to be sheltered. It's gone into rest. Yes. And so it's inside under our cupboards, in our closets, it's hiding. And so when our fogging teams are coming through, you would hear the Ministry of Health say, open your windows and doors. There is a reason for that, because the Aedes aegypti, it's on the inside. And so you have to allow the fog to drift on the inside to be able to get to the Aedes aegypti mosquito. And so once our teams are coming through, in the evenings, we have to open our windows and doors because the Aedes aegypti mosquito is not very active in flight at that moment.
It's not active, so it's but if it's not active, then it's not biting.
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing, yes. Because what we tend to do when we get home, the first thing we do is we turn on the lights on the inside. Yes. So once we turn on the artificial light, she becomes active. But if the environment is dark, Aedes aegypti tends to go into rest.
Okay. So you've spoken about how communities are hostile to you, but how engaged are the communities in these activities? Are you getting what kind of level of engagement?
It really does vary from community to community and from parish to parish. I think what we would like to say that we'd like to see the community more involved and engaged. I visited a country, Brazil, on a workshop, and they had a system in place where the communities have actually formed a partnership with the Ministry of Health, and it's the community members that are monitoring their neighbors. So they do not have vector control workers from the Ministry of Health visiting the homes, but their neighbors are visiting the homes and then making the reports to the Ministry of Health. And I found that it was quite successful. I think we'd like to see more of that here in Jamaica, where the community takes a responsibility, where community members are actually doing the inspection and the reporting. And so there's ownership. So I think we'd like to see more ownership of the program at the community level.
That means more interaction with the public then.
Definitely,
right.
definitely.
So we had a massive outbreak of chickpea in 2014.
Yes.
Tell us, what are the lessons learned?
What we found since the outbreak of chikungunya in 2014 and with Zika in 2016, that there are a lot of factors lending to the breeding of mosquitoes in and around our environment. We've also learned that behavior change is not a short-term objective, but it is a long-term objective. And so in light of that, the Ministry of Health has been looking at its public awareness campaigns and its behavior change program with a view of implementing strategies that will help us to achieve our behavior change objectives, which is simply to get persons to properly manage their breeding, the breeding containers in and around their environment. I think another lesson that we learned from chikungunya and from Zika is that partnership with our stakeholders and our sister agencies very critical.
Yes, yes.
A lot of the factors that lend themselves to the breeding of mosquitoes, it's outside of the mandate of the Ministry of Health to address. And so we have to have what we call a joint up approach with all government, all stakeholders, to be able to tackle successfully the factors that lend themselves to breeding. And so out of the both outbreaks, I think we have a stronger collaborative approach in dealing with the disease in Jamaica. In fact, we have one of the greatest models in the Caribbean, if I can say that. And so we have been working closely with our sister agencies, such as the National Solid Waste Management Authority. We work closely with Parish Council and the National Works Agency in dealing with the issues that lend themselves to the breeding of the mosquitoes.
Yes. We're approaching the dengue period, and already we have some confirmed cases.
Indeed.
Tell us, what can we do as a nation to prevent having more dengue cases?
Definitely.
So we need to look, you tell us how to treat or what we're to do.
Before I get into the strategies, I want us to have a greater understanding about dengue and the epidemiology of dengue. Over the years, we have treated dengue at the household level, like the common flu. You get dengue, you feel a little better, and then it's gone. But what we have seen in our last recent outbreaks is that we're having increased hospitalization and unfortunately increased death. And this is just not in Jamaica, this is across the Caribbean. And this is so because in our region, we have had all 4 serotypes of dengue circulating. And that means that most of us would have been exposed to having dengue more than once. And it is proven that once you've had dengue twice or more, you're predisposed to becoming severely ill each time you get it. Right, and so our population has been exposed to all 4 serotypes. So we're seeing increasing cases. Against that background, we have to take action. We cannot continue to treat dengue as the common cold that you just get over. We're seeing that our children are being affected, and we're seeing deaths. And any death, it's just one death is unacceptable to us at the Ministry of Health. And so there is a call to action from the ministry to the population that we have to begin to manage our environment in a way that it will not cause us to become ill.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. And we know now that once you have dengue, it doesn't mean that's the only time. You can have it again. So you need to take care of yourselves and your communities. This has been Get the Facts with our guest, Shireen Huntley-Jones, Program Manager for the Vector Control Program in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. To watch this program again, log on to our social media handle, YouTube/WatchJIS, and stay connected via our website at jis.gov.jm. Until next time, I'm Anthros Campbell. Take care.
When you're on the road, take your time. When you're on the road, bear this in mind. When you're on the road, you could save a life when you're on the road.
Known as the home of the fastest man in the world, as well as the place where you can get some good yam, Trelawney has so much to offer. Let's go on a journey.
In Trelawney, there's a little of this and a little of that. So all you have to do is come discover and experience. Rafting on the Matabele River is part of the offerings here in Chilani. So when next you're in the parish, come on down. Captain JK, take it away.
Yeah, man. No lele. We don't play. This is how we stay. Everything gotta be okay.
High five.
Blessed. Yeah, man.
So how long you have been doing this for?
I've been doing this over 2 decades now.
Oh, 20 years.
So I know this stuff quite well, you know?
Okay.
But actually we're on the rapids now, you know?
Wait, stop. We can't end this moment so soon. No, sir. Hold this frame for a little while till we go check out some other places and come back.
Welcome to Falmouth All-Age School, once the home of Fort Belcaris. This fort was built in 1811. It was built to protect the harbour and the town of Falmouth. Falmouth in those days was a boom town, boomy, it had a lot of money, and so persons would like to come in and plunder, so this was built. Soldiers were housed in the building at the back, and they were the ones who were manning the fort.
And this is where the armory was stored.
Now, in later years, the fort was used no more, and so in 1902, it became the Falmouth All-Age School.
Now check out this almond tree. It is said to have been around before or from the days of Fort Belcaris, which means it is well over 200 years.
This mill behind me here is a relic of the slave plantation and of the sugar production when sugar was king in the 18th century. It is part of a large estate called Holland Estate. The thing about it is, this property no longer belongs to a slave holder, no longer belongs to a sugar plantation, but is actually the site of William Knibb Memorial High School, named after the famous emancipator, William Knibb. It is quite ironic that in a place where slavery thrived and our forefathers suffered, now sits an institution of learning for the descendants of those very same slaves. Ironic, isn't it?
It's all about the nightlife here in Chilani as well, where you can experience the colorful transformation of the glistening waters luminous lagoon. To capture this part of my tour, I had to start the night before.
We do nightly boat rides. You can come on down and see the flashes of light once the water is being disturbed. We are the only natural night attraction in Jamaica, and it is also known as the world's famous luminous lagoon.
We had a magical experience tonight. It was a great time. Highly recommend it. We'll definitely be back.
It's nothing like it in the world. I've never seen anything like this. So awesome time.
Glistening waters to the world.
You see why you have to come to Chilani? And if bargain is what you want, then Bend Down is the place to be. What go on, my friend? All right, tell me, what's so popular about Bend Down?
Bend Down, everybody can come here, so come get cheap goods, cheap clothes, everything.
Oh, so how you get the name Bend Down?
People from all over Ireland, you know, just come here, so they just throw down their things anywhere and sell.
Oh, and people used to have to just bend down and pick
people
up the
just
stuff
bend down
and
and
things
pick up
there.
anything.
All right, so I'm here for some bargain, so maybe I should bend down and pick up mine. Bargain for real. $100, another 100, another 100, 300, and I'm going for more. All right, thanks. All right, thanks here.
I like my parish Chilani because the water is so cool, it's been cool and nice. And I like the environment is so clean, and the new market is so amazing. That's why I love my parish, Chilani. Big up, Chilani.
Here's more about this parish.
It's all about peace and tranquility, ambience and relaxation, you know? Yeah, man. Bless up.
After a long day exploring Trelawney, this is the perfect end. Just relaxing on the Martha Gray River. Until next time, when I catch you around the bend. Later.
Thanks for watching another edition of Jamaica Magazine. Join us again tomorrow when we'll do this all over again. Send your feedback on today's show to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm. Also, you can follow us on our social media pages, that's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Download our app on your Apple and Android devices, and you can also visit our website at jis.gov.jm for more information. On behalf of the entire production crew, I am Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.
I'm Adam Stewart. This is Business Access TV, serious about business.
Ambassador CARICOM has always welcomed the support of Finland and its Nordic colleagues as we combat the existential threat of climate change. The passage of Hurricane Dorian through the Bahamas 10 days ago vividly illustrated the effects of this phenomenon.
Secretary General, Finland wants to make European Union a global actor in combating climate change. Here we have a challenging agenda that needs to be analyzed together between European Union and CARICOM to secure a better future for our children. Dear Secretary General, it is indeed a great honor to represent Finland in CARICOM. Thank you.
Ambassador, even as some of our nations seek to strengthen financial and economic resilience through diversifying into financial services, they are confronted by the continued blacklisting by the European Union as high-risk and non-cooperative jurisdiction. This is despite the fact that the countries in question are not so listed by the Financial Action Task Force, the globally recognized regulatory authority. We hope we can count on Finland, in its capacity as chair of the Economic and Financial Affairs Council, ECOFIN, in the EU, to afford us the opportunity to engage with Council on this issue. I must thank Finland for its continuing support of the region's meteorological services since 2010. The collaboration between Finnish Meteorological Institute and the Caribbean Meteorological Organization improved the region's capacity to analyze weather conditions and communicate early warning. Is an important partner for the Caribbean community. We have made steady progress since the establishment of formal diplomatic relations in 1997 with the accreditation of your country's first ambassador to CARICOM. We have established, as you mentioned, a joint commission to promote and develop closer relations between the parties in political, economic, environmental, health, scientific and technical fields. Indeed, at this time, we are in consultation with Member States with respect to your proposal for a meeting of the Joint Commission in November. Earlier this year, the CARICOM Development Fund was the beneficiary of $1 million grant from the government of India to provide further evidence of your country's contribution to the region's development. This gesture is highly appreciated, and I sincerely thank your government on behalf of the entire community.
Excellency, the presence of a large Indian diaspora in the region and traditionally close relations of the member countries of CARICOM with India is a very important factor in our relationship. India and CARICOM member states, with our convergence of views on many global issues, can play a very constructive role in the international fora. I convey to you sincere gratitude of my country for the support which we have received throughout the years from all the CARICOM member states in various elections to the UN bodies and international organizations. Count on CARICOM support in the United Nations restructuring, including expansion of the Security Council and India's claim for a permanent membership of the expanded Security Council.
Ambassador Srinivasa also underscored the value of trade between CARICOM and India, expressing optimism that the Joint Commission can meet soon.
Excellency, immense opportunities exist for India and CARICOM member states to further enhance bilateral trade, particularly in the fields of agriculture and food security, health and pharmaceuticals, small and medium enterprises, marine development, and oceanography and disaster management. India's bilateral trade with the CARICOM member states during the previous year was about $674 million.
He said the Honorable Prime Minister of India, His Excellency Mr. Narendra Modi, will be meeting with the heads of delegations from CARICOM member states on the 25th of September in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly for the first ever India-CARICOM Summit.
Studies have shown that for every dollar spent in resilience building, 7 is saved in reconstruction and rebuilding costs. It is why we are advocating strongly for small island and low-lying coastal developing states, SIDS, such as our member states, to access the necessary financing prior to the onset of disasters to enable us to become more resilient. However, the continued use of GDP per capita as the principal criterion for access to concessional development financing is a major impediment to our cause. This criterion disqualifies many of our member states, including the Bahamas, from access. We strongly believe that vulnerability should be the most appropriate measure of SIDS eligibility for concessional development financing, especially as it relates to building resilience against climate change. How can a country such as the Bahamas, having suffered more than $1 billion in damages from natural disasters in 5 years, not be eligible? Last week, I accompanied the Honorable Alan Chastanet, Prime Minister of St. Lucia and Chairman of CARICOM, and the Honorable Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, on a visit to the Bahamas for her first-hand look at the damage wrought by the storm. The scene of devastation and destruction on Abaco Island and Grand Bahama was heartrending for all of us. For 4 of the last 5 years, the people of the Bahamas have had to face the wrath of major hurricanes and the consequences. The physical, psychological, and economic trauma the people of the Caribbean face annually as a result of climate-related disasters is unlike any other region in the world. As small emitters, we are the least culpable in actions which encourage climate change, and yet we are its perpetual victims. It is more than time for meaningful action.
In other news, the Caribbean community continues to tackle the issue of gender-based violence as part of its wider crime and violence prevention agenda. Facilitated with the support of the European Union CARIFORUM Crime and Security Program under the 10th European Development Fund, the capacity of education officials in 5 member states will be built to further empower them to address the problem of gender-based violence in schools. Under the theme, Rethinking Masculinity, Understanding Gender Equality as a Means of Ending Gender-Based Violence in Caribbean Schools, 5 country workshops have been slated for Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Jamaica, Belize, and Suriname. On Thursday, 12 September, the second of 5 workshops opened in Georgetown. Speaking at the opening of the workshop, CARICOM Secretariat Deputy Program Manager for Gender and Development, Ms. Anne-Marie Williams said, teachers should be educated as to the important role they play, not only in prevention of gender-based violence, but also in passing on positive messages through the curriculum, that violence is wrong and that masculinity can also be rooted in peace. The workshop seeks to address major concerns, including the normalization of gender-based violence in the Caribbean based on the findings of a study commissioned by the CARICOM Secretariat in 2012.
It's arguably the most significant invention to come out of Jamaica in the last 2 decades. A medical doctor, a mechanical engineer, and a computer scientist used technology to develop a way to train heart surgeons across the globe more efficiently. The heart simulator developed at the UWI-Mona is now being used by several universities across the world to train surgeons. Professor Daniel Kaur, who worked on the project, says after shelving the first prototype and moving on to other projects, he and the other inventors involved received a call that would change everything.
So in late 2007, we hear from Dr. Richard Fiennes, who was at the time chairman of the American Board of Thoracic Surgery. He had seen a video that had been released along with a paper that we had published. And in the video, we were just showing a small clip of what the heart looked like while, in operation, in use. And he wrote to Dr. Ramphal, basically did a little internet search, tried to find him, sort of located an email address for him at UWI, by which time he had already left UWI, and wrote him and said, I saw this video, is it real? Because if that's real, I'd love to come to UWI to see it, and would you be willing to set it up for us, because we are examining possible simulation environment scenarios for the cardiac surgery training, and this is something that we would like to sort of take a look at just to see what it can do and whether it's good for us.
After some persuasion, the team decided to go to the University of North Carolina to set up the prototype.
First time set up, right? So all these prominent heart surgeons had just come in to take a look at what's going on, and everybody was kind of blown away at just how realistic the heart beating was, and how realistic the whole environment was. So they took out the video footage and took that to their annual meeting that year at the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. And with that video at that meeting, just sort of, caught the eye of everybody who was at that symposium that year. And that ended up getting us invited to technology symposium for cardiothoracic surgery. And we got re-invited year after year.
Soon after that, the UWI-Mona developed Heart Simulator was a sought-after tool when it came to training heart surgeons.
It then got to a point where other places wanted one. They kept saying, how can we get one of these at our institution? So it was kind of around that time, that was started around 2009, that we started talking about how to get multiple ones of these. And by around 2011, we'd actually built them. So in that interim, we had negotiations, sort of thought about how to sort of make it a little more structured and sort of help ourselves get to the point where we could be talking to people who might want a license.
The simulator then ended up in some of the top medical schools in North America, revolutionizing the way heart surgeons were being trained.
Harvard's Mass General Hospital, University of Rochester, there was a University of North Carolina, Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, Mayo Clinic, University of Washington, and Stanford.
This was the first time ever heart surgeons in training were being exposed to real-life circumstances.
Kind of what I mentioned before, where you might have the pig's heart in a bowl, or I suppose if you're working with a cadaver, which is going to be realistic, but it's a dead person, but nothing where the heart is, or actually a live pig. That is the closest that you could come if you wanted to get a full-blown operating room scenario where you are standing around, there's a apparently living, beating heart, and you have to give the right instructions, and you have somebody controlling a pump, somebody controlling anesthesia, and then you have your partner in front and you're supposed to be giving the right instructions, and you're learning not just the specific procedures, but also the management of your team. The only way you could really reconstruct that without having a real patient on the table was a live pig. That was the closest you could come. So what our simulator was providing these guys with was a context in which they could reconstruct any scenario they wanted, when they wanted, at the time they wanted. So from the purpose of teaching, if today's lesson was to teach you something that hardly ever happens, they could make sure it's scheduled what's going to happen because you could set the simulator up to deliver that. So for them, that was a great opportunity to change how training in cardiac surgery could work, right? And at the same time, you're getting this high fidelity model, right? So you're not putting any patients at risk. You have this model that looks real. It bleeds when you cut it. It has a pressure. It shows you a computer trace that looks like it's a real trace on a monitor. So for all intents and purposes, just because you set it up, it's not real. But for all intents and purposes, it looks like a patient on the table.
The Heart Simulator has not only used technology to totally revolutionize the way heart surgeons are trained, but it is also helping to better equip surgeons to deal with real-life situations in real time.
There are some well-rehearsed procedures, as in over time, they've developed some procedures to respond to a particular kind of emergency. But if you as a resident only get trained via the operating room, then the only scenarios that you become familiar with are the ones that you see. Now, of course, if you see 100 cases, 200 cases, then they start thinking, okay, you're ready, you're competent, you can go and you are going to be certified as capable of practice on your own. But what if the scenario that we're worried about isn't one that occurs so frequently? It might be 1 in 1,000 cases, it might be 1 in 2,000 cases. Those are still potentially life-threatening. You still want somebody who's gonna now become an attending to know how to deal with them. And in the old situation, before our simulator, the only way they would have really gotten that exposure is through a textbook or somebody telling them, if you ever encounter this is what you're supposed to do. So it's kind of a hypothetical, and the response is really a kind of theoretical response, or at least a hypothetical one anyway. With a simulator, we can now say, okay, next week's lesson going to be how you deal with this. And I can tell you what you must do, and I can set up the simulator to make that emergency occur. So while you're doing your thing, suddenly something happens and you say, what's going on? And it's for you to A, recognize that there's that emergency going on, and then B, act appropriately. So you can actually now practice that, which is not something that you could have done easier before.
The heart simulator is the first UE patent to be commercialized, and with the recent commitment from Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke to pump more government resources into research and development, it is hoped that more patented inventions coming out of the University of the West Indies can be commercialized.
Now presenting the Jamaica Social Investment Fund ICDP Enterprise Development Project. Entrepreneurial Grant Business Pitch.
This project is a $100 million grant that's seeking to target 50 small and micro business enterprises and give them training, capacity development, equipment, permits and license towards the development and the viability of their business. We have made a call for proposal in March of this year for entrepreneurs to submit for the opportunity to receive a grant between $1 and $5 million. We received more than 500 applications, and so we have now shortlisted them to 100. So we've invited that top 100 applicants here today, and they're going to have to pitch their business idea to a panel, and of the 150 will actually transpire and win the opportunity for the grants. One of the primary objectives of what we're doing here is employment. We want the business to be able to sustain not only the principals as the owners, but we also want the business to be able to employ at least 2 people. The next part of it, as we do in all of our projects like this, is it provides a learning instrument of how we can engage small and micro enterprises and take them to the next level.
Why we're doing this rigorous process, because we want to identify the best potential entrepreneurs for this project. And keep in mind that we are speaking about a loan, so we want to ensure that applicants are committed, and that from a sustainability point of view, that upon receiving the support from JSIP, that in 2 or 3 years, the enterprises will still be operational and the broader objective of the project would be achieved. Once we have now equipped them and they should be ready to start their production line going, we'll then have a mentorship component.
It has been a very competitive process. Jamaica is filled with persons with drive and passion. We're expecting that the best will be selected, and then for those who are not successful, we are also hoping to link them to other providers of services, because I'm telling you today, from what I've seen, it is an excellent opportunity. It's worthy of note that many persons coming here today already have some kind of semblance of a business, but they need the additional support to move that business to the other level, as well as some persons that come in with just proposals to start from scratch. On behalf of the JSIF, we want to really thank the DBJ and other partners from UE who came to be part of the panel, and just to remind you that the JSIF is here and we're investing for community development.
Business current affairs you can relate to. Frank, credible discussion. On point, dissecting the issues. Offering solutions to Jamaica's challenges. On Point, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Business Access TV.
Ready for cable for as little as $100? Ready for no monthly cable bill? Ready for 10 TV channels absolutely free? Then pick up our Ready TV box at authorized stores for $4,500. Hook it up to your TV set, then top it up with Ready Credit for 1, 7, or 30 days. Buy now and get $1,000 free Ready Credit and start watching your favorite shows. Pick it up, hook it up, top it up. Ready TV. Prepaid cable TV when you're ready. Now serving Kingston and St. Catherine. Limited time offer while stocks last. Conditions apply.
Have you seen it? It's BATV Live. Live streams of business news weekdays at 7:30 p.m. Stay on point Thursdays at 8 p.m. with our Business Current Affairs show. And Weekend Business Report Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Wherever you are. Log on to our Facebook page at Business Access TV or visit our website at batvja.com. Live and at your fingertips. Business Access TV. Serious about business.
You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access. Business Access. Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV. Serious
about business.
Serious about business.
The ICAJ hosts their annual business conference here at the Jamaica Pegasus under the theme Megatrends 3.0, Changing Times, Changing Strategies. I'm your host, Mita Prasad Webb. Please stay tuned for highlights.
The world is changing. We're talking about this everywhere I go. The pace of change is unprecedented. And so, yes, I know we're accountants, but our acumen on technology, we're going to have to beef it up. We're going to have to know about big data, cloud, cybersecurity, virtual reality. This is not an environment of tomorrow where you can say, well, I'm just a numbers person. Those days are over. And so today, what we're talking about is that technology makes things a little more seamless. So we always talk about what happened with Blockbuster. We talk about what happened with Kodak. These are case studies that'll be around for years and years. But unfortunately, there are some iconic companies that will be case studies as well. It'll be Radio Shack, might be Yahoo, it might be Toys R Us, it might be Borders. There are companies that I grew up with that I thought would always be here, and yet they're gone. So the question is, will you be here in 3 to 5 years? Will your company be here in 3 to 5 years? And what are you doing about it today to make sure that you will be? So when we talk about the world, I meet people who will say, well, Kimberly, I'm just here in my bubble. No one's going to touch it here. Guess what? I was here before I was here. I've been communicating with your team at the Institute of Chartered Jamaican Accountants for probably close to 6 to 7 months. And so if that is the case, that means that just me not physically being here isn't something you're just like, oh, she's not here, I shouldn't be worried. You should be worried because technology means we're only one click away. And so as Jamaica grows and the economy grows, what you don't want is for companies to bring in other accountants. Because you are the supply, you are the experts, you are the professionals. When they're looking for someone to build a new practice area or to lead a new division, they should be here with the Jamaican accountants. It shouldn't be, oh, we got to pull someone else from the U.S. or another island or here or there. Now, that could be what they want to do, but they shouldn't have to do. And so when we talk about change and what does that mean, there's good news and bad news. The good news is, as a profession, we're purposeful, we're data-driven, we don't like ambiguity. We're really good at giving you answers. We're organized. We like checklists because most of us prefer to go down checklists. We're compliant. We make sure we're following the rules. We're rule followers. We're all of those things. And no matter where I go, there are some things about us that are the same no matter where I go. And that's the good news. The bad news is that we're purposeful. We're data-driven. We don't like uncertainty. Because in a time where you have to be innovative, in a time where you need ideas that are so out there that someone says, that'll never work. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the ideas that people would say would never work. Because what I know is this, surely they told Larry Ellison that. Surely they probably told Bill Gates that. Surely they told Mark Zuckerberg that. Surely they told any one of the leaders who are here today and are billionaires, they said that'll never work. That's the innovation that we have to open up our minds and hearts to. And that's what we have to recognize in the megatrend environment of changing times. Recognizing that what we do and how we do it has to evolve and change. So we've got some trends. And I'll just give a couple of things that I do to stay abreast of everything. And I know it's hard because you're like, Kimberly, it's so much. I've got kids, I've got work, I've got elderly care, parents, that, elder care I need to do. I get it. It is busy. But somehow you've got to figure out how to source the information when you need it. Now, for me, I have a lot of different data sources. I've got FASB alerts, SEC, the Journal of Accountancy, the Maryland Statement. I've got the Fortune, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, all of these different alerts coming into my phone and into my email so that I'll know what's going on in the business world around me. Because you can't ask really good questions. You can't manage risk if you're isolated. That's why understanding the trends around you are so important. Because you're going to miss something if you don't pay attention. And so, yes, you've got to pay attention to Brexit. You've got to pay attention to what's going on in Venezuela and geopolitical instability. Your companies could be multinational and there's opportunities for you to go and work in different offices. Yes, you have to pay attention to what's going on in the financial world as it relates to who's able to pay their bills and who's going to bankrupt on their obligations and who with the tariffs that are currently, that argument that's going back and forth. You have to have enough awareness to know where to go. You don't have to memorize it, but you do need to say, when I need it, where can I go find it? Get that source in your environment. And then from a regulatory complexity perspective, the regulations are changing. There's an opportunity for you to add feedback. I'm sure the Institute would, lobby a position on your behalf if they knew that there was a position. You have to be active participants in the environment that we're in. And I know in Maryland, they'll ask us to write letters. They'll ask us to show up. Hopefully you're showing up and you're participating in your own environment and being an advocate for the profession. And then, of course, the two areas I left were technology and workforce changes. From a technology perspective, we know that in today's world, we've got the Internet of Things. We've got refrigerators that can call out for soda. When you walk in a grocery store, your phone starts beeping with aisle 9, aisle 10. We know that when I grew up, it was the Jetsons, and having a robot in your home was like a thing of unbelievable. It just wouldn't happen. And yet, if I say the wrong word, Google is like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And isn't that nerve-wracking a little bit, right? That they would even wake up to know that you said some word. The world is changing. And so even as we talk about workforce changes, a lot of those workforce changes are coming from our generational differences. Our Zs, born typically in the late 1990s and the 2000s, and our millennial colleagues born in 1980 to about late 90s, they don't want to work the same way that Gen X. I'm a Gen X. And they don't want to work the same way. And I get that. The quality of life, you want to have the ability to have the summer, you want to live, you want to see the world. But you know what? There's no fun without finance. Because how many of you have ever been on a vacation without any money? There is no fun in that. So you need a great job to fund your habits. Our young people can mentor us, our young colleagues. They deserve their seat at the table. Yet at the same time, people who are boomers and traditionalists, they also have context and wisdom. There is a compromise and meeting of the minds. And I'm so delighted that I get to talk about what that means. And so technology is everywhere. And a lot of times, boomers mostly, and some traditionalists. They're in denial sometimes. So if you're in those categories, they say, well, Kimberly, this too shall pass. Well, I don't think social media is going to pass. I mean, I get it, and I say this everywhere I go because I'm going to own it. When Facebook came out, I was years before I actually had a Facebook page because I was like, who wants to see me at the sunset? Who cares what I had for dinner? I mean, I was just like, does it even matter? And those famous last words, I wouldn't be working now if I got in the stock when I should have. So I say that to say, let's not ignore this by thinking this is going to pass, because it's not. Especially when you see in the manufacturing environments. That was before automation. This is after automation. Now, it might not be your job function, but if you're doing anything that a machine can do, over time, your companies may make tough decisions about who does that work. Okay? So that is, it doesn't have to be scary if you're prepared. So we all need to bring our A game and pay attention to the mega trends because it's important. We know that technology is driving transformation. If you were able to go into your environment and save money, figure out how to create and drive revenue, enable transformation, imagine how much more valuable you would be. Imagine how well positioned you would be if they were making tough choices.
What are the key points of your presentation this morning?
So the key points of my presentation are that we have to continually evolve and change, and looking at the trends will help us be in a better position.
Is this your first time here at the Chartered Accountants Conference?
Yes! This is amazing. The energy, the enthusiasm. I walked into this room and immediately felt energized, like caffeine. So I'm really excited to be here.
How would you say conferences of this nature benefit the industry?
So conferences like this, and what I really want to call out is that the president talked about doing a conference that wasn't about technical themes. So this conference that talks about other things that make us well-rounded, that give us perspective, that help us grow and learn, I think are amazing, because this is exactly what we need to know. We need to know what's going on in the world around us, and we need to discuss how those help us in our day-to-day jobs and how we may need to change our strategies.
Talk to us about the theme of your presentation, changing times, changing strategies.
So I really followed the conference theme, and I really wanted it to be informative. I wanted it to be a call to action. I wanted to talk about what every person in this room could do to be intentional and to be accountable. And so changing times just speaks to how technology is changing everything, and we need to change our strategies. So I think they're related, and I'm excited about that.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I think that we are all capable easily of doing what we need. When we talk about inspirational, motivational, hard work, persistence, high integrity, ethics, that's the very definition of the Institute of Chartered Jamaican Accountants. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future.
They say it takes a village to raise a child, but the world will one day need the leadership of that child. The time you spend with your child matters. It stimulates their minds and shapes the way they act. Talk with your children. Help them to better understand the world around them and to value what is truly precious. Above all, the most valuable gift you can give them is love. Play, talk, teach, love. Take the time. It makes all the difference. A message from the Parenting Helpline and Ad Council Jamaica.
If you look at the major economies of the world, so we looked at about 46 or 50 of the major economies, and we said, okay, are they seeing growth or not? And that chart tells you what percentage of those economies is seeing positive growth. And so what you've seen is, this is the first time, going back 10 years, that so many countries around the world, including here in Jamaica, by the way, are seeing strong growth. So it's a good thing, right? We've got, not only do we have strong economic growth globally, it's also synchronized. And that's generally a good thing because you want all countries to be sort of, you want a rising tide that lifts all the boats. The evidence from tariffs is that you end up supporting unproductive companies making horrible products at very high prices. I'm also a Gen Xer, as Kimberly is. I grew up in India. I can testify to crappy products at high prices made by horrible companies that shouldn't have existed, right? And so I'm sure there's folks in this room who can understand that as well. On the business side, we have companies coming in saying, oh, come on, I saw all this big global growth, there was tax reform, I was going to make all these waves of investments to capitalize, now you're telling me my supply chains are going to get messed up. So most companies are sort of in wait-and-see mode now. There's also a bunch of firms that saying, you know what, I'm going to try to find local substitutes, and are coming to us and saying, I can't find them. I can't find local substitutes. So what am I going to do, right? Now, that's the broad evidence. Personally, I'm actually not sure what's going to happen. If that's what's going to happen, or if we might actually see some benefit, because there are examples, the little thing on the blue, which is hard to read, there are examples where tariffs have worked. Many Asian economies where companies have been protected for a while, as long as there is competition and as long as there's a push for productivity and investment, you actually do see the tariffs sometimes do work. So that gets us to why all of this is happening, which I think is useful for people to understand, certainly from the US perspective. What happens to the exchange rate? So the theory, the economic theory would tell you that all these tariffs at the end of the day are not going to make a difference because the currency will adjust and imports will become cheaper, exports will become more expensive, and you'll end up with a trade deficit again. You might see, a reallocation. So maybe there won't be as much metals imports, but there'll be some other imports, right? And so overall, the trade deficit will remain the same. That's quite possible. One thing that we've seen is when you look at the US dollar against a bunch of its trading partners, one of the reasons we think that the supply chain has gotten hollowed out is because the exchange rate, this is a chart of the US dollar against a bunch of currencies. The US dollar appreciated in the late 90s, and that is coincident with this sort of decline of the domestic supply chain. A lot of people call out attention to China, but it's not just China, it's the appreciation of the dollar. And what we've seen is that the dollar has stayed at a high value against some of these trading partners since then. So against the Japanese, against the Koreans, you've seen that the dollar has stayed high. And so it is entirely possible that the dollar might adjust, which means that we may end up in a situation back in the 1980s, which again has implications for trade. Now, any of you might remember your history. In the early 1980s with the Reagan administration, we went through something similar to what we're going through now, right? Voluntary restraints on imports, tariffs on a bunch of imports. The target then was Japan and Europe. Now it's China. It didn't work. It didn't work because the exchange rate appreciated and the deficit stayed. And so we ended up with what's called the Plaza Accords of 1985, which was a devaluation of the US dollar, effectively. Some of those people who were involved in those negotiations back in the 1980s are in the administration today. So you might see, I personally would be watching for that to see what happens to the exchange rate. But I am here to tell you, as I tell most of the companies that we work with, if you are holding your breath expecting that all this tariff noise will go away, you should probably start breathing. We have a very resilient global economy, strong, sustained growth for several years, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, but you're starting to see this concern. And one of the concerns, the most important concern that we're seeing from businesses is what is happening with all this trade and geopolitical uncertainty. And what is happening is the fact that there is an escalation, no question, and the escalation is happening under trade auspices that give the administration in the US a lot of authority and a lot of leeway to change practices. And if you look at the words that are coming out of the administration, you will see consistent language about this. Most of that is geared towards the third point, that is to turn around 20 years of a decline in the US supply chain and try to make things better there through more domestic sourcing, through more investment, and through more protectionist policies. And is that going to work? Is anybody's guess? The empirical evidence is not strong. But then we've also not had this kind of a situation where you've got an administration saying, we're going to try to do this.
Give us some feedback on your presentation today.
Well, I think, we wanted to make the point about what's going on with the broader global economy, issues around trade and tariffs, which I know are on top of mind for most people. They are concerned about what they're seeing coming out of the US. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of covered some of those issues. I think the main point that I wanted to make was that, we are in slightly a different environment where you do have a lot of global growth going on. It's been 10 years since the global economy has been in this situation where there's been such strong growth. And so having these trade issues, these tariffs issues are a little bit of a cloud that a lot of business executives have been telling us are certainly concerns for us. And so that's why we've been developing a perspective on that.
Speak to some of the trends in your field and how they help or harm our local trade.
Well, I think there's a couple of trends that I'd probably call out. One is the fact that, even though you've had very strong global growth, it hasn't translated to the kind of global trade and investment flows that we got used to at least last decade. So 10 years ago, we were in a strong period of global growth, and there was a lot of global trade, there was a lot of global investment, cross-border flows of services and goods. This time, it's still strong growth, but there's not commensurate growth in trade and investment. And so one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is why that's happening. And then certainly now that you've seen more action on tariffs coming from the US administration, that's also acting as a dampener on further growth of trade and investment. So I think one of the big things that we're seeing is the fact that, most people have been wondering whether the tariffs are really going to, are they going to stick around? Do just wait it out? And one of the points we've been trying to make is to understand why the tariffs are coming by looking at issues around the domestic supply chain, particularly in some of these advanced industries, where what we've seen is that over the last 20 years or so, the majority of the growth that the American manufacturing sector has seen has not been shared by small and mid-sized companies in the domestic supply chain. All of that growth has gone to the largest companies. And the smaller and mid-sized firms in the domestic supply chain, by and large, have seen negative growth rates. You've seen companies or establishments shutting down. And that matters because the majority of workers, the majority of investment is in that supply chain. And so when the supply chain doesn't see strong growth, it has a knock-on effect on things like wage growth or investment growth or technology readiness or productivity growth, right? And so that's really what we're seeing, or what we're looking for is when you have this new kind of environment around tariffs, is that combined with things like tax reform, are you actually going to see a wave of investment coming into the supply chain? That's what we're looking for.
Talk to us about what's unique about the design of this conference.
This conference is geared towards getting persons prepared for the change that is happening, the disruption that is happening in the world today, and for our leaders to understand the change and what it means for them. And that's what's unique about it. In fact, that we are focusing on it. It's not really a numbers crunching IFRS conference. It's really a true business conference where we can focus on other things outside of accounting.
What were some expectations that you had of this conference?
First of all, I expected to have a very high level of participation from our members and from the business community. I expect that our presenters would deliver on the topics that were selected for them in accordance with the objectives of the ICAJ. And so far, we are very pleased that we are meeting those objectives. It's changing time, changing strategies, and we really like to impart knowledge to our membership and to the business community, so I think that expectation is paramount.
More from the ICAJ Business Conference when we return.
Violence is bad. Violence against our innocent little children is terrible. Pretending not to notice when we know or suspect that a child is suffering is awful and morally wrong. In the words of the great Nelson Mandela, there can be no keener realization of a nation's soul than the way in which it treats its children. Think about that for a second. I have a voice. It's one of my gifts. I intend to use it on behalf of our children. No more violence against our children. Make your move to stop violence against our children right now. No more. No more. No more.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters. Call us at 876-618-2870 or email us at sales@batvja.com. Business Access TV, serious about business.
If you are just joining us, Business Access TV is here at the Jamaica Pegasus for the ICAJ Annual Business Conference.
Let's talk about encryption for a little bit. Encryption today is not what it used to be. Encryption today is actually very, very simple. I mean, you can do it on your phone, on your laptop, on your tablets with just a couple of clicks. So by all means, encrypt the data that you consider sensitive. It's very easy to do, and it's a very, very effective way to achieve data security. If an app that you're looking at or looking at installing, if it seems too good to be true, chances are it really is too good to be true. I mean, this one app is not going to change the world with just a couple of clicks. That's not impossible. You want to ensure that only the applications that you have on your devices are the applications that are necessary for the execution of your function, of your job function. So don't have things that are installed on there that, you know, is just on there just because it looks kind of cool. It's nice to have that sort of stuff. Many times those apps, especially the ones that seem too good to be true, all they are backdoors for stealing your data. Email is the most widely used tool to compromise data security. It's a low-hanging fruit. The truth is, hackers by nature are actually very lazy people that really don't have to work hard for what it is that they're getting. So if they can do something, if they can send out 1 million emails with malicious content or malicious link, all they're really interested in is that 100 people click on it. They're not really interested that 1 million people have actually clicked on it. And really and truly is, as a hacker, they actually don't want to be in your environment, because if they're in your environment, then the likelihood of getting caught increases. So if they can do it remotely, it's much better for them. And they do that by email, by sending an email with a compromised link or a compromised attachment. So always think before you click on any form of attachments that with any email at all. I'll actually take a step back and say to you, think before you even open the email. Because I've seen situations today where the email will come with an attachment, but the attachment is a self-executing attachment. So once you click on the email itself, the attachment executes in the background, steals your data. I know there's a practice that, you know, especially for people who use Outlook, to have the preview pane of the email up and running, because it makes life easier. It is, because you can quickly glance at the preview pane and say, all right, this is what it's about, and you can make a decision about whether to act or not to act. I'd actually recommend that you turn it off, because those self-executing emails actually run once the preview pane comes up. Another thing that you want to do is you want to keep your systems up to date. You want to ensure that the applications that are running on your devices, whether it's your phone, your tablet, or your computer, are up to date. Nearly all the time a vendor releases an update, it's nearly always to fix a security hole. Oftentimes, it's, you know, a small portion of the time is for functionality. If they're going to release functionality, they actually release a new version of the application. But once they publish an update for the application, nearly all the time, it is a security-related hole that they're trying to fix. There are so many vulnerabilities that exist today with so many applications that, you know, you have to, as soon as a newer version comes out, you want to ensure that you keep your system up to date and install the latest versions of software. It's often you have applications or you have data on your devices, and the usage of that data is just, you know, you have it just because. No, don't keep data on your machine just because you need to have it on there. Because it becomes unused over time, it becomes old and you forget about it, and then the next time you remember about it is when you're in the headlines, because, you know, suddenly company data is out there, your machine was compromised, and you remember, oh, I had this folder on my machine. One of the things that we recommend is that once you're done, you set expiration on the data sets that you're using. So once you're done with something, after the reasonable reporting period has passed, move it, archive it into a secure location, an offsite storage or something like that. Now, backup is often not associated with security. It's often associated with other components of IT. But backup is actually a very important component in security. If we think back to the security triad, backup is affected by the availability component of that triad. Now think of if, for argument's sake, you suffered a compromise of any kind and your data becomes corrupt or lost or anything like that. The absence of a functioning or a proper backup means that the data is no longer available. It means that the system is no longer available. It means that the application is no longer available. And you have failed the availability component of the triad, and therefore you have failed data security. So it's very important to have verifiable backups. Don't just back up your data and say, all right, fine, I'll copy these files over to this folder, I'll run the backup process in this application, and it has copied the file and stored them in a location, in a secure location. Always verify them. We've seen an example where we were called in to investigate a compromise. And the compromise was so bad that we said to the customer, look, give me a backup set, let's start to recover from the backup set. And they diligently showed us the log of their backups. The backup happened every night. The technician checked it off that it was backed up and so on. But when we went to the backup was actually compromised as well. So they're ticking it off that it's being backed up, but nobody is checking to say, is this backup a backup of the compromised data? It just so happens that it was backup of the compromised data, but the backup runs and it says it's completed successfully, and they tick the box. Yes, we've backed up our data. One of the things that I'd recommend here also is that security awareness training, one of the things that we try to do is we try to connect it personally. I know a lot of times, people are doing their jobs and they kind of abstract their work life from their personal life. So one of the things that we do is we try to connect security and data security in particular to your own personal situation. So we'll talk about things like, consider things like how would a compromise of your bank accounts affect you personally, right? And think about all the emotions and everything that goes with that. You can't pay a mortgage and all of that sort of stuff. Think about what will happen if that exact same compromise would happen in the company's bank account. People can't get paid, suppliers can't get paid, and that sort of stuff. So one of the things I do, if you try to connect it on a personal level, and you see the gravity or the impact of the situation personally, then it's easier to translate that into business. Achieving data security is not a line in the sand that you draw and you say, boy, all right, I've done all of these things, so my data is now secure. It's a continual process. You have to keep assessing. You have to keep looking at your data needs, your data assets, and saying, all right, is the risk that we face today the same tomorrow? And you have to continually improve. It's a process of continual improvement. I think in security in the security circles we have a common thought that there are really just two types of businesses in the world: those who have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked. And that's a reality. It takes about, the average security incident takes about 30 days to be discovered. And for companies that their pockets are, they're deep and they're invested in it, it maybe take another 180 days to recover from it. So it could be up to a year in many instances that you don't even know that you've been compromised. Many businesses don't ever recover from a compromise. So to achieve data security, do something. There are many things on the list that are simple to do. They're low-hanging fruits. Just do them. Because doing something is much better than doing nothing and assuming that you've never had a compromise.
The way the technology is going now, it's not even a race for relevance. It's a race for survival. Because if you're not with it, you're going to die. Right? In fact, you have to be savvy. So I was tempted to come up here with paper, but I make sure I come with the iPhone. Because if you go anywhere you're presenting now from paper, you're not cutting it. So sometimes even you don't have anything on the phone, you carry it up here, so, right? And some people do it, you know that? Yeah, man, them walk up with the phone and, yes, and moving out that thing on the phone, right? But it's the look, right? And it's the image. I'm going to talk about the image because we really have to change it. Because obviously, technology affords us to do things cheaper, more efficient, all of the above in terms of that. So there are some opportunities there for us finance people. So what's the imperative of our finance professional? First of all, we have to apprise ourselves with the technology that's available across. Right? We're going to discuss some of them, but what I'm saying is that whatever we can do in this small window cannot replace the plethora of different applications that are out there. So as a finance professional within your industry, you have to be researching, talking to IT, looking overseas to ensure that you're aware what is out there. Companies are going through rapid technological change. It's emotionally charged. Every day you hear that there's a list coming out, and you wonder if you're named upon the list. Nobody understand what I'm talking about? It's reality, right? So when we're doing technological changes, right, it calls for proper leadership. And it can happen in many ways. You can even get sabotaged. Because if you don't treat people well, they can sabotage you in the transformation process. So this managing of the organizational impact is key. And I would recommend that if it is major enough, get what we call change management help. Right? You may need people who are adept at change management to guide you through this process. Focus on talent and skills. Very critical. The skills that we needed yesterday and the talent are not necessarily what we need today and going forward. And that's one of the challenges that we have. Some tough decisions may have to be taken, and we may have to redeploy people. But you have to make sure that we have the right talent and skill to take their organization forward based on the new technologies that we are applying. Cashier-free store. Real. Amazon has this. You have an Amazon card. You just walk into the store, you swipe, go in, take what you want, leave, and the process send the bill to you. Nobody's involved. Understand that implications for that. In fact, a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was in Israel and on a tour. And in there you can do the Israel tour. It's a very good tour. But we stopped at a gas station with the tour guide and put the nozzle in his tank, full up, drove out. Asked him, nobody was involved. He explained to me that the nozzle has a microchip, and so does the car tank. The amount of gas that he's taking is recorded, transmitted by a bill to his company from the gas station. Nobody involved. Right? So I saw that, and it wasn't even last year, this was over 2 years ago. This is a sign of where we are and where we are going. So I'm just putting these things up there. And if you want to research it, fine. But I'm just trying to tell you, because we used to talk about the future. The Heptones have a song that said, the future is here, my dear. Because the future is here. So all of what we're talking about, we used to talk about their emerging technologies. No, the technology is here. We have to be very cognizant of social media. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm on all of them. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of them. Because we have communicated and keeping in touch with your team members, knowing what they're doing, your children, your niece and nephew and all of that, this social media thing. So I'm saying to us as chartered accountants, don't have any phobia about it. Get with the program. So our job is not to be fearful of what is happening. Our job is to adapt to the change and make sure that we can perform as professionals under the new systems. Right? Our brain, Tavi. In fact, let's say a man's brain, it start work from in his mother's womb and don't stop work at all right until adulthood. When a man's brain stop work, when his wife asks him, where were you last night, honey? That's the only time a man's brain stop work. Right? But seriously, the computers cannot really replace us. But they will make us redundant if we don't adapt to change. So in summary, as I said before, I didn't intend to give you a technical presentation. I really want to give you what you call a reality check to make sure that you understand that these technologies, I mean, I've been part of change process for a number of years, but never before have I seen so much coming at me in a short space of time. You understand? It's not like one time when you have liquor time, you don't have no room for error. It's coming, right? Rapid, rapid, rapid. And I'm saying, as accountants, we have to deal with it, grasp opportunities, make things better for ourselves and the organization, and just don't let the bus leave us. All in all, before wrapping up, the question is, are you ready? And I hope you're ready.
PwC is a sponsor here today. Talk to us about that partnership.
Yeah, but PwC, we are very happy to sponsor this conference. The Institute, we have been sponsoring it a few years now. We think it's a very important conference for accountants to maintain their relevance in a very dynamic environment. We think it's value for money to get all stakeholders on board on a conference like this, to share some very good ideas, cover some good topics. So we are always on board and we'll continue to be on board with it.
Today you are also a presenter. Speak to us about the main points of your presentation.
The topic of my presentation was professional accountants maintaining relevance in the digital age. So it's all to do with us as accountants moving with the pace of technology, because we all know technology is taking over almost everything. So we have to ensure that we take steps to make sure that we are relevant. There are opportunities, there are challenges. So my talk, my presentation covered a number of emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, cyber security, cloud computing, number of different areas. Encouraging the accountants to get on board, familiarize yourself with all these technologies to ensure that you can function properly in the digital age.
Outside of functioning properly in the digital age, what advice would you give young professionals who want to become accountants?
Well, it's a noble profession. I don't think there's a profession that gives you the wide insight into businesses as auditing and accounting. It's really broad-based. I would encourage youngsters to take a serious look at it. I think career choice is very critical. You have to look at something that you have the aptitude for, something that can pay your bills, and something that you like, because those three have to go together. So that's my advice. I'm not going to go to say everybody must turn an accountant. Do the research and make sure. But I'm telling you that's an attractive profession. It's a plethora because of activities, because you have auditors, you have forensic auditors, you have internal auditors, you have financial analysts, chief accountants. So there's a wide range in the profession that you can get into.
It's season 12, and Wealth Magazine Business Access is here to keep you business savvy. With an impressive mix of some of Jamaica's most inspiring business moguls, we continue to keep Jamaica informed, empowered, and ready to dominate. Tune in Sundays at 5 p.m. only on BATV.
You're watching
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
I'm pleased to be here to talk to you about T-Tech. T-Tech is the first company to be listed on the Junior Stock Exchange and as an IT firm, and we provide managed services to persons in the IT space. So if you have network servers to be managed, we will look after that for you, provide a service desk. We also help you to implement your cybersecurity program.
Why did you decide to be a sponsor here today?
Well, one, we work closely with financial members of financial profession because they tend to also supervise IT professionals, and also we recognize that the financial profession needs to understand the importance of cybersecurity.
Give us some clarity on BPOs and share some benefits.
Well, in terms of clarity, overall it's an industry that's very people-centric. So it hires a lot of folks, and it also enables their growth and development. And if I were to think of some what you'd call advantages of the industry, I would say, simply put, It creates options that are not limited by age, race, nationality, or any other factor that usually impacts corporate America. In my example, personally, I was a vice president at age 25 in a Fortune 500 company. There's not many industries that take that kind of a chance on someone who is young and does not necessarily meet the status quo. These conferences from a BPOX perspective, for me, the biggest advantage is there's a lot of negative perception and a lot of negative press out there about the industry. And what it does, it deters people who could really have an impact to come in and succeed. So from functions like this, my intention is always to correct those myths and to ensure that people view the industry in a positive light, because it is indeed a positive industry.
So talk to us about CPA Canada. What do you guys do?
Sure. CPA Canada, CPA, Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. We are Canada's national accounting designation. But as much as I say Canada, we are 100% recognized globally. As such, we are affiliate members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica and recognized by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean. Basically, if someone wants to become an accountant, they usually do a first degree, sometimes they choose to do a second. But at some point in time, they need to become a qualified accountant. Accountancy, like other professions, are highly governed, and as a result, one needs to choose a designation to qualify under. CPA Canada is one such option. It is 100% available to persons who are living in Jamaica. Fortunately, it's 2018, and there's no longer the need to actually go to Canada to earn the designation. Someone can actually sit in Jamaica, continue working, enjoy their family life, and study at the same time. This is actually our second year as a sponsor of the ICAJ conference. It's a great opportunity for us to maintain connections and ties and support our members who are based in Jamaica. So some of these persons who are present here today are actually Canadian CPAs active in Jamaica. And it's also a good touch point for the younger ones who are still undecided as to what designations they want to do. And for those who are qualified, we have a lot of certificate programs that they can now subscribe to. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I particularly like this conference because it's not just 100% accounting topics per se, which can get very technical. It's more of a business conference and really touches issues that are affecting us in the business community today.
Speak to us about the mandate of the ICAJ.
So the ICAJ is the institute that governs the accounting profession. So our members are those persons who have qualified in accountancy to earn the designation as chartered accountants. So essentially our job is to engage with those members, help manage them through their career, and to provide for new members a training of students and the coaching and mentorship of students so that they can become chartered accountants one day. So this is a business conference, and the theme is meant to be there for covering non-accounting issues, because we're trying to attract an audience other than our traditional membership. So the last 3 years, we've done the Megatrends hashtag. So that's why it's 3.0, Megatrends 3.0. The feedback has been extremely positive. I think people like the topics. I've got very positive feedback on the speakers themselves. There's good energy in the room, there's good buzz. So from that perspective, the conference has met our objectives. We have probably our largest delegate list ever, just over 300 people. There are about 50 people online. So from a total attendance, yes, it probably has checked that box. From a diversity of the persons who are attending, I think we've fallen a bit short. So we need to figure out how we bring more people into the discussion. This is not intended to be focused only on accountants. So to the extent that we wanted to see more bankers, attorneys, other professions, engineers. We have a topic coming up on the environment and disposal of plastics and how we manage plastics in our economy. What challenges and opportunities that present. That's not an accounting discussion. That's a discussion that anyone who lives and works in Jamaica should be interested in. And so diversity, I think we can improve that. From a production perspective, I think, again, this year we have done a better job than prior years, so we're continuously improving, but I think we can still take the production level up a notch. We want it to be a really high impact type of conference, so you feel as if at the moment you walk in that this is something new and different every year. So we're going to work on those two aspects in the future.
There you have it, another staging of the ICAJ Business Conference. I've been your host, Amita Prasad Webb, and thank you for watching Business Access TV, serious about business.
Evelyn Harris is a maroon healer in Jamaica. She has spent decades making a living from her knowledge of Jamaican plants and their healing properties. The products she makes from these plants are in constant demand, and she's happy to be able to help others. She is symbolic of many persons in the Caribbean whose traditional knowledge is a rich and often unacknowledged resource.
You have to be curious to learn about herbs. This is dog's blood, and this one is good for infection or black tube. And this one is piaba, and the piaba is what good for women who's going through menopause.
She, like many others in the region, can share stories of how her knowledge has contributed to research without being properly credited or compensated. But all that will change as more Caribbean countries are getting on board with a Nagoya Protocol that will protect knowledge held by persons like Evelyn and will serve to preserve the natural resources she depends on. The Nagoya Protocol is an international agreement that focuses on the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits from the sustainable use of genetic resources. It is an agreement that researchers and prospective business developers that use the Caribbean's natural resources need to be aware of.
The Caribbean region has an abundant variety of marine and terrestrial biodiversity, including a high number of endemic species of flora and fauna. This richness is combined with a mix of cultures and traditional knowledge. Also, it is clear that Caribbean countries recognize the importance of their unique genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge, and at the same time know that sharing the benefits of the utilization of these resources can be a way to protect the rich natural resources and bring prosperity to Caribbean people.
The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, in partnership with the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF, is working with regional governments, research institutions, and other partners in the Caribbean to support countries to promote the sustainable use of the region's resources.
The needs are envisioned at 3 levels. One is at local levels, working with local communities and indigenous groups. The second level is the national level, working mainly with government and key line agencies that are going to be somehow responsible to implement the protocol, that have competencies according to the national law and the international legislation. And the third level is the regional level, working with CARICOM, for example, with OECS, other regional bodies like tourism organizations or other pertinent bodies that has responsibilities as well in the provision of the Nagoya Protocol.
Regulations will also be established for prior informed consent to access resources and the negotiation of mutually agreed terms to maximize the benefits of the protocol.
The Nagoya Protocol specifically deals with the issue of access to genetic resources and the sharing of the benefits that are gained from those resources. Now, if you think about the issue of sustainable development, if you think about the issue of natural resource management, it is necessary for these countries, who in most cases are small island developing states or developing countries, they need resources to be able to protect these natural resources that we have, these genetic resources. And so any avenue that is going to assist with making sure that some of these benefits come back in order to sustainably use these resources is something that the IUCN is always interested in providing.
The Bahamas, for example, is a hotspot for access to genetic resources for research and development. But only in one case of successful commercialization has benefit sharing with a country on the basis of an ABS contract took place.
There is a soft coral, which is a wavy coral. It's harvested annually in the Bahamas, and an extract from that was the first source of chemicals which are used today in skin revitalizing anti-aging creams. One of the researchers from the University of California came to the Bahamas and discovered a class of compounds which have anti-inflammatory properties. Later on, over 100 products in the world have been developed from the extracts from this coral.
For practitioners such as Dr. Sylvia Mitchell, the protocol will change the way how local communities and indigenous people like the Amerindians, Maroons, and Rastafarians operate.
The indigenous and local communities have to be part of the process. A very important part that the Nagoya Protocol recognizes in this whole value chain is that there are local indigenous communities all over the biodiversity-rich areas that have, over many, many generations, developed recipes. And when you develop products in the end, many, many years later, creams, anti-cancer, whatever, many times that traditional knowledge has been taken into account, but it doesn't filter back to those local communities.
Several Caribbean countries have already started putting in the framework to benefit from the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. In Guyana, certain key steps have been taken.
Guyana already had a system in place with regards to granting access to its genetic resources. And that system is basically done through the Environmental Protection Agency. We're the agency responsible for granting all access to persons coming into the country to do research. If persons want to enter a specific community to access a specific resource, they have to get the consent of that community. When that consent is received, what they do is they have to submit that to, we have Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. And they would usually issue official permission saying the community has no objection with this person coming in to do such and such. When we have that, then we would issue our permit.
For Antigua and Barbuda, much has already been done, as these islands are in the process of depositing their ratification instrument.
This project will allow us to develop our regulations, to develop our policy, to set up our institutional infrastructure to now manage the issues. We don't know when any genetic materials and the associated traditional knowledge are being taken out of the country. We're not aware. It's only those people who will inform certain agencies or certain government agencies that they're taking them out. That only happens occasionally. But in instituting this Nagoya Protocol, in instituting our ABS regulations and policy, we'll be able to finally have a system to regulate this process.
The Nagoya Protocol is helping to preserve traditional knowledge that could be lost as elders die.
Over a period of time, people will come there, people have their complaints, people want to be treated for some ailments or whatever, and people just community folks will do what they have to do for them, but not necessarily telling them, you know, what is it I have done for you. Okay, if you come, you have a problem with your belly or your back or your shoulder or whatever, you will get the treatment for it. but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to know all the ingredients and stuff that goes into it. And even sometimes if people would probably show to you, you might see an ingredient or two that they use, but it would be probably the least importance of the ingredient that you would have seen.
As the Caribbean embraces new opportunities to benefit from our biological resources, we look to the future.
I represent 11 parishes across the island which have a membership about 5,000. These are traditional farmers who have been growing marijuana illegally for years. Now that we are on the way to have a formal industry, we are working hard to allow standards to fit their needs as grassroots people while working with governments and agencies across the world.
The Nagoya Protocol is opening doors for Caribbean people.
Stay current and gain more information on the ever-evolving industry of real estate on Home Sweet Home, Sundays at 4:30 p.m. on Business Access TV.